Hi friends! Today we're unraveling the plot of A Con Artist, but that okay? Hit that subscribe button and let's get started. The wealth and influence of this family surpassed even that of the Sart imperial family. It was said that the blessing of the goddess Sart descended upon them first. Among this family, Kaguya stood out in particular, a young duke with impeccable appearance, enormous wealth, and a high title. But there was another reason for his popularity. Just 2 months ago, he returned to the empire after studying abroad, and hadn't made a single public appearance until now. The boy said that the more girls dream of marrying him, the more actively strange rumors spread. There were rumors that Duke Urbios's first wife died within a year due to a curse. The man smiles and remarks that perhaps it's just a rumor. The boy explains that he said this because the lady is heading to the Urbios duchy, and he's curious about who the duke's wife will be. The boy informs the lady that they have arrived. The protagonist steps out of the carriage and reflects on the fact that this is where she will enter into a contract marriage. The young gentleman reads the contract, after which he says that the terms completely suit him and suggests that he proceed in this manner. The butler hands the lady the contract and asks her to read it carefully. He silently thinks he pities the young and beautiful girl, destined for a loveless marriage. The assistant reminds them that the wedding will take place soon and suggests they double-check the previously agreed-upon terms. The man says he personally received this document from the archbishop. He adds that once the lady signs, the contract will be protected by the power of the goddess Sart. The woman asks the lady if everything is okay. She calmly replies that everything is fine. The man explains that upon signing, the lady will become the Duchess of Urbios for 1 year. She will be paid 100,000 gold pieces as an advance. He adds that she will be given 10,000 rubles a month for personal expenses, and upon successful completion of the contract, she will receive 1 million. The man assures her that she has nothing to worry about, but the girl suddenly interrupts. She says she knows she should be quiet, faithful, and honest. The butler confirms that she understood everything correctly and informs her that there is one last point related to the expiration date of the contract. The duke interrupts him and asks how much longer he must wait. Then he approaches the girl and asks if she has any questions about the engagement. The main character looks into his eyes and notices a scar on his eyebrow. Urbios says there are no more questions and points to the place where she needs to sign. After the girl signs the document, he turns away and says that he needs to leave. The gentleman apologizes for his behavior and says that the duke doesn't usually behave like this, but he's probably just very busy right now. The lady replies that she understands. The man adds that the duke is taciturn and poor at expressing emotions. He assures that with time, after the lady's arrival in the duchy, he will change. He claims that rumors about the curse and death of the duke's first wife within a year are complete nonsense. Dvoretsky says that those spreading such slander are actively sought and severely punished. He advises ladies to ignore such rumors. The main character replies that she is fine, and at that moment she thinks that it was she who once spread that rumor. Cecil Aramis was a wise and kind girl with a beautiful appearance and a gentle nature. She seemed to have it all, but if the story ended there, it would never have begun. Her father, Viscount Edward Aramis, lived a righteous life and was renowned for his honesty and integrity. His only weakness was an excessive sense of duty to set an example for others. The Viscount wanted his daughter to become a lady to be emulated. He often told her she shouldn't be like those vulgar girls who considered money the most important thing in life. Her father also insisted that her appearance not be too provocative. Cecil never disappointed him because he was her only family and she wanted his love. The Aramis family was considered one of the most influential in all of Peron, and the fact that so many people watched the duke was a source of pride for Cecil. But the pride that seemed eternal quickly vanished. Peron found itself at the center of rapid development, and selling the land promised a lifetime of wealth without effort. This decision changed everything. Cecil understood what was happening and urged her father to defend the city's honor. She considered it unacceptable to sell it to those interested only in money. The girl insisted that the land belonged not only to the Viscount, but was the pride and breath of Peron. Yet, deep down, she knew her father's decision was logical and inevitable. Soon, the assistant informed Cecil that trouble had occurred and the Viscount was feeling ill. The girl hurried to her father. He told her to always live honestly and correctly so as not to be ashamed to bear the name Aramis. The young lady knew her father remained true to himself until the end. She couldn't even cry, for the plunge into eternal sleep seemed too unfair. At the funeral, the man told her she was now Viscountess Aramis. He assured her he would always be there and that they were family. At that moment, the girl remembered her father's instructions about trusting people, mutual support, and caring for body and soul. Sometime later, she was informed that she had to leave the house, showing the eviction order. Horrified, she declared that her father had never sold the mansion. The man replied that he knew nothing about it, but his deputy had a different opinion. Her uncle's betrayal, the forged documents, and total ruin all came crashing down at once. Not because she was stupid, but because she never suspected anyone. In the end, Sisal was kicked out, left with nothing. She stood and watched the mansion that had stood for hundreds of years crumble, unable to even move. She realized that the values she had believed in all her life had suddenly turned against her. But the girl understood that the cruel world did not stop there, and this was only the beginning. One day, she approached her relatives for help, but they refused, citing their own difficulties. The man said she needed to get used to such time. No one even gave her a hot meal, and no one stood up for her when she tried to prove that her uncle had forged documents. A series of deceptions and betrayals followed. But the young lady continued to live by her father's precepts. At one point, she thought that this was the end of Sisal, who had lived an honest and decent life. The man stated that she had violated her duty as a nobleman and taken the life of another person, and therefore must atone for her sins by dying. The main character understood that the source of her troubles was the guild owner, who was persecuting her because of a debt that she had not been able to repay for years. When he grabbed her, she decided to fight back with the first object she came across, which turned out to be a marble seal. Cecil looked around at the people around her and thought that she was no longer surprised at how miserable human life could be. Suddenly, the policeman grabbed her by the hair and asked if she was laughing. The judge called her a vile, heartless killer, with no remorse, who took another person's life, and yet she believed her life had not been in vain. In the prison of St. Plasia, she had comrades with whom she shared joys and pain for 10 years. The young lady understood that today was the end of this. She looked up at the sky and wondered if her father was pleased, since she had nothing to reproach herself for. Sisal decided that if she could live her life over again, she would do it her way. She would cheat first and devour her enemies to the bone before they did it to her. She thought that if she could be reborn and open her eyes differently, she would see the world differently. Suddenly, opening her eyes, she saw her old room. Sisal decided it was just a vision from the moment of death. She heard her uncle's voice say that she had lost consciousness and asked if she recognized him. The main character thought that she recognized him perfectly well because it was he who threw her life into the abyss. Sisal couldn't understand why this vision seemed too real. The uncle reported that her brother's funeral was over and added that she could not remain in this state forever. Hearing this, the girl realized she had returned to the day of her father's funeral. A few minutes later, she realized she had indeed found herself in the past. Cecil wondered why she hadn't seen the lie on his face. Her uncle handed her a handkerchief and offered her a rest, asking if she would follow in her father's footsteps. She smiled and said they'd better get out of here. Wiping her eyes, Sisal added that she wanted to rest. Uncle replied that this was expected, said that they would leave today, and offered to call them at any time. The main character told him to take his father's watch off his wrist and leave. At that moment, she thanked God for the chance to deal with those vile thieves. Looking at herself in the mirror, Cecil realized she was truly back. It felt strange to smile, as she hadn't yet been kicked out or sent to prison. She remembered that hellish life, where she could only hold back her tears, and realized that she smiled most often in prison. The girl remembered acquaintances who had become like sisters to her during her 10 years in prison. They were rude, but much more honest than the others. Through them, she learned things that were important for survival. Cruelty, betrayal, and deception of a good soul. Sisal knew she had learned to swear, and thought it was in the past, but now she was shaking with the thought that something was being taken away from her again. She remembered the warden saying he needed space and would take their cell. Sisal wondered if the prisoners had any choice but to enter into eternal sleep, and realized they were doomed. Looking at her father's portrait, the girl wondered who would be right. She decided to protect what she considered valuable. At this time, in a tavern on the outskirts of the village, Edgar, the head of the mercenary guild Kator, was asking why no one had contacted him yet. He asked if the boy was sure he had reached an agreement with his younger brother, and suggested waiting until the end of the day. The guild leader irritably declared that it was too boring to hang around here for a week. He reminded him who Marquise Kaela was, and threatened that he would not tolerate any delays. Edgar didn't know what to do. He knew Viscount Aramis couldn't move without money, and he regretted listening to the peasant. The man reported that Viscount Aramis had fallen into eternal sleep. The uncle said that even if he had to steal it, he would still bring what he wanted. He added that the Viscount's daughter was beautiful and could survive with the right person. The captain noticed that it was almost midnight and asked if they had taken too long. At that moment, the main character appeared and said that perhaps she should explain who she was. The man smiled and replied that there was no need for that, remembering that her name was Sisal and surprised by her appearance. The gentleman asked what brought her here, and the guy noticed that she was able to leave the house. The girl showed the bag and asked why they were just sitting there and not going to pay the money. The captain asked her to listen and said that her sudden and rude appearance was confusing them. Sisal replied that who knows, since they made it clear that they would not sell the land, and added that it was strange to see them still in the village. Deep down, she knew they could either bribe her uncle or send her into eternal sleep. She had no guarantee she'd survive until tomorrow. Then the girl decided to sell her property and said that she preferred to receive gold bars rather than cash. She showed the documents for the Viscount's residence and all the family's lands scattered throughout Peron. The guild leader smiled and said it was a good idea, but such a deal would require about 50 ingots. She interrupted him and named 200. The man cried out, declaring that the lady knew nothing of this world and said that the price was already too high. But the girl calmly repeated that only 200 would suit her. He smiled and suggested they settle on 100. Sisal insisted on 200 again, explaining that otherwise people like her wouldn't even listen to him. That was her final price. She asked for a carriage to be called, declaring that she would go to the next customer. The captain asked her to wait and hinted that she might have problems. She was surprised and asked if he would have more. The man didn't understand what she meant. Sisal explained that by sitting idle in an expensive hotel, he risked returning empty-handed, and the client would hardly forgive that. Edward smiled and agreed to the lady's terms, inviting her to sit down and discuss everything calmly. The lady calmly asks whether they are ready to buy it for 200 or not. The main character presses the gold bars to her cheeks and, with a satisfied smile, declares that she is now rich. She promises to vacate the house by tomorrow. The captain replies that it will be easier for them and says that the cart will be waiting for her. The girl continues to stand there and stare at them. The man, surprised, asks if she's planning to leave, since the deal is already closed. Sisal says it's time for a new deal. She mentions trading watches and asks how they like the idea. The next morning, her uncle is surprised because Eileen definitely gave her tea, but there is still no news. The wife asks why he is so worried, believing that the property of that house will still go to them. Uncle recalls Sisal's words from yesterday about the clock and leaving. He realizes he saw a look that only hardened criminals have. The woman suggests not to worry, reminding that even at the funeral, the girl behaved strangely. The husband agrees and says that's probably true. He adds that they need to hurry, because those people won't wait. Uncle decides to ask Eileen for tea again. He remembers the pharmacist's words about how 1 cup is enough to bring down even a monster. The man thinks this is a great option, and thinks that in the end, she will still ask for help. Seeing the maid Eileen, the master irritably asks why she came so late. The maid, nervously, begins to talk about the previous night, but is interrupted. The man says the result will be the same, and asks for the letter. Uncle confidently states that it is obvious that Sisal asked to hand over control to him. The maid hands over the letter. The wife asks if Sisal is calling them to her right now. After reading the letter, the man screams and asks what the eviction order means. The maid informs her mistress that the guests are already outside. She is surprised at how quickly they arrived and goes to open the door. Sisal greets them and says that it looks like they received everything she sent. Uncle asks what this means and remarks that she should change her clothes. She replies that this is her house and there is no need. Relatives indignantly ask what all this means and demand an explanation. The girl replies that everything is in the documents, including the eviction order. She calmly adds that they should move out by the specified date. The main character warns that otherwise they will face unpleasant consequences and advises them not to disobey the instructions. Uncle shouts, asking how she can be so cold. He speaks of humanity and declares that he could have demanded what was his, but chose not to because of kinship. Hearing this, Sisal smiles and says that it is strange to hear such words from the man who gave her sleeping pills while she was alone. She suggests asking Eileen about this and reminding her about that very tea. The maid immediately objects, saying that she was only following orders. The uncle approaches her, pushes her, and shouts at her to shut up. He then accuses his niece of madness and greed. He states that he must teach her some manners and says that it won't hurt her. At that moment, the gentlemen appear. Uncle is surprised and says he was planning to sort everything out himself. The captain turns to the girl and tells her that he really liked the watch he received last night. She replies that she's glad about it. Uncle asks, confused, what's going on? Sazel says he still hasn't figured out who's paying and who's getting paid. The captain rudely slaps his uncle on the back of the head and asks the girl what she is going to do next. The man notes that she will most likely be followed. Sazel calmly replies that she doesn't think that will happen. She offers to find more people if necessary and understands that money talks. The lady decides that she has dealt with the consequences and now it is time to leave. A few days later, the main character arrives in the northern city of Nuaran and inquires at the hotel about available rooms. The worker informs the visitors that one guest has rented the entire hotel. Sazel thinks it's even for the best. She understands that if people learned of her return, they would talk about the need to change the future, without knowing the truth. Her blood boils at the thought of the money that was returned to the treasury while she was in prison, because she had worked so hard to get it. The girl remembers how she first spoke to that man. The guy jokingly offered to listen and remarked that, judging by the number of tears, she must have collected a lot of money. The protagonist pushes away her memories, realizing that now is not the time for the past. Even without Perron's land, she cannot remain inactive. Sazel decides to write down in detail all the events of her past life so as not to repeat the mistakes. She recalls that 3 months had passed since the emperor's death after the betrayal. The debt was never repaid, and it all looked like a marriage scam. The man who married her promised happiness after serving in the army, but then stole all her property and ran away. The girl was seething with anger and dreaming of revenge. She understood that the blows were coming one after another, although no naivete was written on her face. Heavy memories washed over him in waves, as did the news of the sudden death of Duke Erbios, the most powerful figure in the empire. House Erbios was the only one who could restrain the imperial family, having an ancient history and traditions. After the death of the emperor, the duke supported the new ruler and wielded enormous power, while remaining honest and modest. Even Sazel's father had never seen his face, but he admired him endlessly, considering him a role model. The girl understood that his death had a strong impact on her fate, becoming the first step towards a dead end. The entire empire was shocked by the passing of the noble duke. People hoped that unity would transform the country's future. Meanwhile, the main character was being deceived again. Kartsi Erbios remained the people's last hope. Blessed by the goddess Sart, he became the symbol of faith of the entire empire and the sole heir to the ducal land. But the empire collapsed, and it suffered a second collapse when the young duke died in a carriage accident. The Marquis of Ervant, the duke's half-brother, seized power. His greed plunged the country into lawlessness, where money and force ruled. Sazel realized she had been deceived for the 12th time, and then came the execution. Her life ended along with the empire. The girl cries out in despair that this shouldn't happen. The guy greets her and asks how she's doing. He mentions the noise caused by the guest who rented the penthouse and asks why she looks so serious. The girl turns to Duke Arkell Erbios and asks why he is here, clarifying whether he is alive. The duke is surprised by her words and thinks that there are things that cannot be bought. He asks what she has in mind. Sazel realizes he's okay and thanks God. She says the next target is the duke and his son. The man advises against dreaming about the younger duke and says that he is currently studying, and the duke is busy with the affairs of the empire. He adds that Kartse was educated on the northern continent since childhood and is likely in Belcray. Arkell says that he doesn't know her plans, but warns that she won't be able to get close to the younger duke. Sazel is glad that the events are different from her memories and assures that she has no hidden agenda. Arkell explains that he came to deliver a letter and reports that one of the people she needs is nearby. Sazel refuses help and says that she will do everything herself, fearing that Edgar will try to recruit the child. Aslan Blair was a notorious criminal long before Sazel's imprisonment, and her reputation spoke for itself. The newspapers had called Aslan a devil's mind, and it was only after meeting her in person that Sazel realized that this was no exaggeration. In fact, the articles were too soft. The woman shouts sharply at the girl, forbidding her to stand there. The owner accuses her of pretending and threatens punishment for touching things. The blue-haired girl objects and says that she is just hungry. The mistress screams, calling her a thief, and says that correction is only possible through death, like her brother. Aslan replies that his brother didn't steal, he just wasn't paid. The owner is surprised and states that she is not obligated to pay such people, but the girl insists that this was according to the contract. The woman ridicules the words about the law and reminds them that they were sold as slaves. The owner threatens that the girl will die from illness, like her brother, and waves her hand. At this moment, the main character intercepts her hand and greets her. The mistress demands that she be released and states that a lady should not interfere. Sazel calmly replies that it was necessary to intervene and lets go of his hand. She turns to the girl and discreetly passes the knife under her sleeve. At this moment, Sazel thinks that this girl definitely has talent. She recalls how, behind bars, Aslan told how she had put a person into eternal sleep for the first time. Aslan said that she did it out of revenge, because otherwise she would have died herself. The girl tells the owner that she doesn't have to continue, and Sazel realizes that the knife was unnecessary. Aslan insists that even without her, those around her would have helped. The lady thinks the people have already been bribed. The hostess asks what they are doing and whether the girl is the lady's secret sister. She adds that she once thought she was dead, but she turned out to be resilient. The hostess invites the lady to go her way and asks if she wants to buy anything. Sazel asks the price. The woman is surprised and immediately changes her tone. The hostess begins to praise the bar, but the lady clarifies that she is talking about the child. The woman asks why she needs this worthless girl and immediately thinks about the benefit. The owner says that the child is diligent and names a price of no less than 1,000. Sazel offers 10,000, and the woman immediately agrees. Aslan protests, but the mistress pushes her and demands that she remain silent. Seeing the money, the woman offers any services in addition. The main character asks to light a candle, and the hostess adds that after washing, the girl will become a real beauty. The woman says that a pimp on the street noticed her and apparently kept her for the future. At that moment, Sazel coldly orders her to shut her mouth because the alcohol is about to spill. The drenched woman becomes indignant, asking what kind of antics she's having, and shouts that since the lady gave her money, she should behave decently. The main character calmly explains that the price includes alcohol and laundry. Then she warns that if she takes a single step, she will burn her alive. The young lady looks at the girl and thinks that one thing is clear from her face. She is ready to plunge the man into eternal sleep. Sazel approaches her and invites her to go with him. Afterward, she takes her to a luxurious village restaurant and feeds her to her heart's content. Aslan says the lady shouldn't have done this out of pity for her. The main character replies that she does not need a slave, but a comrade. Hearing this, the girl objects and says that she cannot be the companion of such a noble lady. The lady calmly replies that it's possible and she doesn't need to stutter. She thinks to herself that she knows all about her pretense. Aslan insists that if it's not allowed, it's not allowed, and is certain the mistress is simply toying with her. The lady replies that if she wanted to, she would have already used the knife she had hidden, and asks if that's true. The lady says she doesn't really mean to do that to her, but she suddenly wonders why she smells so plain, and it brings back memories of the past. Sazel says there's no need to worry in that case. She won't force her to do slave labor, and emphasizes that this isn't charity. The surprised girl asks why such a lady would need her. The protagonist responds by asking how someone like her is different from herself. Then she explains that she is an orphan and considers all people equal. Aslan asks if they are equal before the law. The lady counters, saying they are equal before money. She admits that in this world, she has no one to trust or rely on, and asks if it wouldn't be better to have someone like family. The main character adds that it's not difficult. Just don't deceive each other and don't betray each other. Sazel takes the girl by the hand and tells her that family means turning a blind eye to petty theft, not reporting, and not hitting. Then he asks if she understands and says that if she's finished eating, it's time for them to leave. Aslan asks the mistress to wait. The protagonist replies that she won't force her, knowing she's not the type to be coerced. The girl says she's not sure how well she knows her. The lady asks if she thinks she doesn't know her. She insists she doesn't do things that are unprofitable and asks her not to worry, as she only needs her abilities. The girl asks how much the lady will pay if she goes with her. Sazel hands her a bun. Aslan, surprised, asks if the mistress wants her to gain weight and then sell it to that pimp on the street. The mistress screams and begs him not to say such horrible things. She thinks to herself that she's about to explode from the amount of dirty words. The young lady understands that it's impossible to reveal Aslan's soul in a single day. She sees how wary she is after a difficult life. At first, the main character attracts her with money, gradually getting closer. Aslan says he doesn't know what the lady wants and asks her not to even think about accepting anything for free. A contract is a contract. The protagonist replies that raising a wildcat is difficult. She says she understands everything and asks if she said she wouldn't comply with the terms. The mistress notices that the girl has eaten and hidden her fork under her clothes. She tells her she can keep it, but asks her to take out her knife as well. The girl asks what her mistress does anyway. She clarifies why she's needed, if she's not being used as a pickpocket or as bait. Aslan admits she finds it hard to believe the talk about family, and recalls being told this isn't charity. She says she needs to know the goal to mentally prepare. Sazel says it's time to reveal her true purpose. She plans to deceive this empire, swallow the country, and continue to scam until she's caught, corroding the system from within. The protagonist suggests, leaving aside the trivialities. She asks whether such a child's life should be cut short over trivial matters when he or she can grow to be so much more. Hearing this, the girl smiles and apologizes for laughing. She says the lady is too naive and asks if she's been reading too many cheap novels. The little girl asks if this is true. The lady assures her that it is, adding that they won't be alone. The young lady says that if she's had her laugh, then it's time to go. It's time to find the others. The little girl admits that she doesn't understand anything and asks if this means that first they need to find people for this crazy plan. The newspaper seller shouts that a breaking news release has come out about the death of His Excellency, the Duke of Urbios. In the carriage, Aslan asks what the noise is and reminds her that she will take from the lady exactly as much as she gives. The protagonist believes she's been idle for too long. Upon learning that the Duke was living peacefully in the capital, she believes her destiny has changed. Sazel realizes this isn't just the past, but the beginning of hell in her life. She decides to be more careful and says they need to hurry. Aslan asks why there is a need to hurry, since the coachman is already complaining that he might collapse from fatigue. The main character clutches the jewel in her hands and assures that she can handle it. The girl says that the things on her neck give her strength to do things she hadn't done before. Sazel explains that it is impossible to put someone into eternal sleep and asks not to turn this into a problem. A silver-haired girl asks the coachman if the carriage will go faster if one passenger is removed. He tells her to calm down and not talk nonsense. The assistant turns to the master and asks him to close his eyes, even if only for a moment. He asks what the captain said. The man reports that after the meeting of the envoys, the carriage overturned on the way to the opening ceremony of the library due to construction work near the cliff. A young man with black hair asks if the body is still intact. The assistant offers tea to calm down. The gentleman says the carriage has been stopped. He plans to go and retrieve the body himself, ordering that all the circumstances be clarified before the funeral. The Duke says it's the head of the family's duty to leave, no doubt. The assistant notes that he has barely eaten anything and is in an excessively hasty hurry. The gentleman drinks the tea, asks if it's enough, and orders the horse to be prepared immediately and the letter sent. He says he'll arrive in 3 days and orders the place guarded. Suddenly, the assistant comes up from behind and stabs the gentleman in the back, reminding him that he shouldn't have rushed. The man says that if he wanted to know how his father went into eternal sleep, he could have asked. He adds that this is exactly how it happened. Aslan, driving the cart, asks his sister if she told him about this place and clarifies where they are going at the crossroads. The main character tries to remember what was written in the newspaper at the time. Apparently, the Duke was behaving unusually. He was rushing to hear about his father, being too young. The young lady thinks it would have been better to go through the birch forest, but he turns into the holly forest to look for the body. She tells the girl to go there alone. Aslan is indignant and asks what kind of nonsense this is and why they need holly. Sazel asks if she sees any red fruit and says she hopes nothing has happened yet. The main character thinks that if the line of the Urbios duchy disappears, justice in the empire will disappear along with it. The lady recalls how the world once descended into chaos. Now, having decided to become the empire's greatest swindler, she understands that its downfall would be pointless. Sazel asks if they can go any faster. Aslan replies that if they do, they might never get there. The main character cries out that she knows where the carriage is. Aslan stops a little further and suggests they get off. The lady says there's no time. She gets out, walks a few meters, and notices a brooch on the ground. The red liquid indicates that the gentlemen are injured. Sazel says that given the carriage's appearance, there don't seem to be any survivors. Aslan suggests they leave. Aslan adds that they are late, and if they do anything wrong, they will be caught. The girl notices the mistress disappearing into the bushes and asks if she heard her. She speaks of danger again. The lady replies that they'll then buy the lawyer and the entire Supreme Court. She understands that if they leave things as they are, things will get worse. Aslan asks why. The lady replies that the empire could become lawless. Sazel finds the wounded master, approaches him and says that they finally meet, calling him the guardian of her empire. Aslan admits that she thought her sister was a naive fool, but she didn't know that she had such a clear goal. Aslan says she thought the lady was an immature noblewoman challenging the world. The lady replies that she knows she still thinks that way. The main character thinks that she did the right thing by saving him for the sake of future generations. She doesn't understand how a wounded man can look so beautiful, causing a heavy echo in her chest and a strange pity. Aslan says the man is barely breathing and could fall into eternal sleep at any moment. The lady objects and says that this should not happen, otherwise it would all be in vain. The girl says that they should have gone to the hospital straight away and asks what they are doing anyway. At night, they load the man into a carriage and drive away. They only manage to reach a remote village. Aslan notices the beautiful scenery and asks if they'll bury him in the morning. The lady cries out, asking who she's planning to bury. Suddenly, a guy comes up to them and asks in surprise what this carriage is doing here. Seeing him, the girl asks if he's the owner. The guy inquires about their business. Aslan explains that they're looking for a place to spend the night on the road. She says they like the place and asks if they can stay for a few days. The man replies that the house is empty. He lives down in the village and rarely comes here, so it's quiet. Aslan says that they will not cause any problems and that her mistress is not stingy. The guy asks if she's talking about the lady. The main character apologizes and says she's too tired to come out and say hello. The girl asks the lady to come in quickly and asks what will happen if she gets sick. Aslan says that even in shock, you need to take care of yourself. Lady agrees, adding that her father won't survive this. The girl asks why she says that and calls it terrible. The boy says they can stay. He notes that this is no place for a noble lady, but his village is too noisy right now. He adds that there was an accident nearby, and the military and its managers were scouring the area. The girls are surprised. The guy advises them to be careful and promises to bring food in the mornings. Sazel says that since her mother went into eternal sleep, she has had difficulty eating, and adds that she will come to her soon. The girl cries, then calms the lady and says that they will go there together. When the guy leaves, the main character says that there is no time to waste and suggests moving the wounded man quickly. After the transfer, their backs hurt a lot. They are not used to carrying such a heavy load. Aslan asks if they should bring a doctor. The lady replies that it's pointless, but then says that since they found him, they'll make him live a long time. The girl is surprised and asks how. She says that even if they save him, he will barely be able to move. The main character says there's someone who can save him, even pierce the god of eternal sleep. She suggests they go and find him. Sazel says she'll be monitoring the patient's condition. Aslan, surprised, asks if that's all. Aslan says she is being left out and asks what they are going to do. The lady puts a hood on her. The girl asks what she's doing, and the lady replies that nothing terrible is happening. As the young lady leaves, the mistress reflects on how she looks her age. She realizes that if the girl were truly frightened, someone would already be in eternal sleep. Sazel becomes curious about how to make a human out of her, because she even knows where she hides the knife. At this time, the girl reads a letter. It contains Ray's name, but no surname, and the address of the best and largest nursery in the north, in Havanra. Aslan recalls the lady's words about Rhea being as kind as an angel, and that it would be clear at first glance. But she wonders what kind of angel could live in a nursery. The main character says that everything will become clear when we meet, and if she gives the address, Ray will immediately confirm. Standing at the door, the girl warns that if he comes and doesn't find her, then even the contract won't stop her. Meanwhile, Sazel tends to the gentleman, wiping his forehead with a napkin. She says that kind people like Raya are rare, and she could be called a living angel. The main character adds that Raya is kinder than many in St. Placia and has a deep, sincere soul. The young lady looks at the prince and can't understand how she could have forgotten. She calls him her savior, asks for patience, and says she must bring Aslan if she's still alive. Meanwhile, the girl approaches the house of the most famous doctor in the village. The woman says Countess Moulton's chronic illness has flared up again and will require more attention this time. The man agrees and adds that the countess has a caring husband who will certainly meet them halfway in exchange for treatment. Hearing this, the woman smiles and asks what kind of person he is. The girl, overhearing the conversation, thinks they seem to be related. The woman turns to the maid and asks why she's standing idle and whether she heard the conversation. She says that if you know the symptoms, you should immediately discuss the treatment. The woman reminds the maid that she can fire her at any time. The daughter asks her mother to stop, saying that she's failing to fulfill her duties again. The girl asks how they will write out the prescription without her and says that the Count and his wife will arrive soon. The woman says she loses her appetite just looking at the girl and tells her to speak faster. She describes a severe headache, vomiting, and dizziness that are making life difficult. The Countess adds that she has heard about insomnia and sudden weight loss and asks what medicine should be used. The girl explains that you need to mix 20 grams of dried tamil root with licorice juice. She says the effect on headaches will be immediate. The man abruptly interrupts her, declaring that that's enough. The woman adds that if she hasn't finished speaking, he should at least bring her some tea, accusing her of stupidity. The boy tells his mother that he already warned her that being nice will ruin her. Aslan, watching the scene, thinks she hasn't felt this way in a long time. She wants to put someone into eternal sleep. She remembers the lady's words about not causing trouble. Aslan follows the maid and, left alone with her, asks where she's going. The maid becomes frightened and demands to know who she is. The girl replies that if she's looking for a doctor, he's not here. The silver-haired lady says she came for someone else, not him. Aslan says he is looking for Araya, with no last name, and assumes she lives in this house. The maid replies that there is no such person here, and suggests waiting. Aslan says she needs to deliver something. She apologizes and asks him to wait a bit, keeping her pride in check. Aslan asks in surprise if this is the same Rhea who lives in the kennel, adding that the place looks worse than a doghouse. The girl says that her sister's words turned out to be true and promises to explain everything later, offering to go with her. Rhea says that she hasn't had guests for a long time and offers to at least treat them to some tea. At this time, Sazel remembers that Rhea lives in the village of Heavenry. It is a small village on the border that almost no one knows about, and its dwelling resembles a kennel at the home of a famous doctor. Ray's full name is Ray's Courage Aaron. She wasn't raised in this house, but rather as the only daughter of a respected doctor. The talent passed down through her blood, and her father's teachings left her with no doubt about her duty to save people. But there was a problem: her gender. According to Heavenry law, only a man could be the head of a household. This meant that all of Rhea's abilities meant nothing to her father. When Rhea turned 19, her father married her off to an apprentice. He had neither money nor family, but he seemed kind. The father soon fell into an eternal sleep from illness. Before doing so, he took their hands and asked them to keep the family together. The protagonist realizes her father missed something important. The boy only seemed kind because he had nothing. After his father-in-law's death, he brought his relatives into the house, and bullying of Rhea began from all sides. Her husband relied entirely on her knowledge at the hospital, but no one considered her a member of the family. Hearing this, the main character asks if she is angry that her husband has swallowed up her home and life. Rhea replies that as long as she kept the family together according to her father's wishes, it didn't matter. Her goal was to link the family line with her name. She says she didn't expect an easy path and gave up all her dreams. One day, her husband kicked her out of the room for the sake of his sister, sending her to a hut where it was impossible to live. She was stuck there, as if her life only had meaning when she was around her patients. Sazel calls it madness and can't understand how she came to terms with it. Rhea replies that everything was bearable until she learned the truth about her sister. Rhea says she returned to get her things and saw them together. They were whispering about capturing Aaron's clan. The girl says she was just getting ready to leave. Aslan screams and says that he should have at least hit. Rhea confesses to poisoning them with froze, her favorite poison. It's odorless, but it paralyzes the body and corrodes the stomach. The lady explains that a moderate dose is painless, but because of the crowd in Ray's house, she used a lethal dose. Rhea asks why they are looking at her like that, and says that the whole family could have fallen into eternal sleep at once. The main character understands that even then, Raya was one step ahead of the others. Sazel looks at the girl in surprise, and she says that the assassin forced her to do it. The lady thinks she is at least glad that Raya found refuge, even though she did not expect such an outcome. The protagonist decides she urgently needs to find Raya and prevent the poisoning. She asks where she went. Aslan replies that Raya went into the garden where her husband and his family were gathered. Sazel understands that failure cannot be allowed, tells Aslan to wait, and thinks that such beasts should not be given the first blow. The Count says that his wife's headache has passed and notes a rare piece. He offers to tell them what they want, promising a generous reward. The man replies that he does not treat for profit. The Countess says that she had seen this girl before, but because of the pain, she was unable to think clearly. The lady mentions that the doctor married the only daughter of the Aaron family and asks if it is she. The man denies it and says that she is not his wife, but simply lives in the house. The doctor adds that after the wedding, she constantly disappears, as if she is not there. He says he is not sure if he has the right to call himself of the Aaron family. The woman states that the family is just a name, and that her son created the family, so the surname should belong to him. The Count reminds that he is the chief lawman of the region, and the doctor knew this when he entered the family. The mother says the system is cruel, and the talented child is being chained. At this point, Sazel appears and asks if it is barbaric to swallow someone else's family whole. She says she didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the conversation seemed absurd. The doctor doesn't understand who she is, and is outraged by her interference. He suggests going through a different entrance. Sazel asks who will treat her then, since the prescriptions aren't his. The Count asks who she is. She replies that she is indebted to Aaron's family. The man says that she is of the same status as them and is surprised by the noblewoman's rudeness. The main character replies that etiquette is important, but ingratitude is worse than any insult. Sazel takes Rhea's hand and says that it was she who saved her life and the lives of many dear people. Even in harsh conditions, 5 people lived thanks to Ray for 10 years. The man asks what this is about, reminding him that he is the doctor here. Sazel asks if the doctor is ashamed to behave like that and wonders if he considers her an accomplice. She says it's stupid, because if she were in on it, she wouldn't have made a fuss. She adds that Rhea could have simply poisoned the place. At that moment, Sazel is certain there's nothing in the cup. Rhea isn't the type to willingly take innocent lives. The Duke asks to stop the argument, saying that the doctor cured his wife and checked everything himself. Sazel asks if he's heard the recipe. The doctor repeats that the Tamil root should be mixed with licorice juice. The main character says that this can cause one to fall into eternal sleep, and notes that Raya knew this. The doctor shouts that this is slander and points to the Countess's good condition. Raya says she used a different mixture of cannoli and Milano leaves, making it herself. Sazel thinks the doctor is a fool for not understanding that Raya wouldn't give up her pride. His laziness saved the day. Sazel notes that it's strange to see 2 different recipes and wonders how that happened. Raya suggests checking and testing the doctor's prescription. The Duke asks how to do this. Sazel says she will drink it herself to prove the truth. The doctor shouts that the girl is to blame. The Count asks if he admits the prescription isn't his. The woman blames her son, and he shifts the blame onto the girl. The Count demands that they stop and asks how they dare lie in front of his wife. The doctor accuses Rhea, saying that she deceived her husband and planned this. The Count reminds that he himself lied when he said that she was not his wife. Sazel says the Count surprises her and asks how he could trust a patient's life to a man capable of lying like that. The girl adds that it is necessary to conduct an investigation into all the prescriptions of the patients he treated up to this point. The Count's wife turns to her husband and says that the lady is right, because the most important thing is that this girl saved her life, and we cannot allow the fates of other people to depend on this. The Countess declares that upon her return, she will carefully check all the doctor's prescriptions and actions, and if even one lie is revealed, he will forever lose the right to treat people. The Count speaks loudly to the servants, asks what they are waiting for, and orders that this man be taken away immediately. The man turns to Rhea and asks if she's just going to watch. He reminds her of her father's will, that he was entrusted with this house, and asserts that as long as he lives, the house will exist. The doctor shouts out that the precious Aaron family must be protected. The lady coldly replies that she hopes he will defend it just as diligently in future. The Countess is about to leave and says that she owes a lot, asking how she can repay. The girl objects and says that she doesn't owe her anything, because her duty is to heal people's illnesses. The woman replies that she cannot simply leave her benefactor, and that even the honor of the Moulton family demands retribution. The girl says that the chance will come someday. The Countess agrees and notes that the world is unpredictable, adding that she will wait for that day. Raya admits that she doesn't know what to say and can only express gratitude. The protagonist explains that she didn't do this just for the sake of words. She says she never saved her mistress and wouldn't even dare touch such a noble lady. Sazel asks if she can do it in the future, explaining that if she doesn't save him now, she can later. Aslan screams and asks her sister who she is even saving, calling the lady an assassin and pointing out what she has done. The lady calmly replies that she saved one person. The silver-haired girl speaks rudely to the lady, shouts that she will not leave it like this, and threatens to burn everyone who lives in this house. The lady orders the girl to sit still and adds that her sister has only her. Rhea asks if they are related, since she calls the lady sister, and notes that you can't tell by looking at her. Zazel replies that appearance doesn't matter because the world sees her the way she wants. The main character asks why she didn't tell the Archduke everything from the very beginning, since she could have immediately said that it was she who was doing the treatment. The girl replies that she is not the head of the family and not the heir, and no one will listen to a girl without rights. That is how she saw this world. Rhea says that in any case, she must repay the lady, because thanks to her, she no longer has to see the people she hated, and if she can do something, she will do everything possible. The protagonist asks if it's all there is. She replies that it's both property and money. Zazel immediately says she needs the house then. The girl agrees and offers to take it. The protagonist notes that she appreciates such a cool answer. A surprised Rhea asks why she needs a mansion. The lady replies that for many things, then turns to Aslan and tells her not to sit idle, suggesting that she light a fire. The main character thinks that the house is being burned without regret, but she wonders if everything will be okay with Rhea, because this place was dear to her. The mistress notices that the lady clearly doesn't like this, but she suddenly smiles and says that it should have been done much earlier. Zazel realizes that for a moment she forgot that in front of her was the assassin of an entire family, and asks if she is really okay, since this is all her property. Rhea replies that she doesn't care, and that she keeps the most valuable things in her head, after which she asks what happened today. The lady interrupts and asks if this world is disgusting, adding that the kinder you live, the more you are deceived. The lady says that if you behave well, they attack you. If you smile, they tear your smile off, calling these basic rules. The lady says that at least she can make her name and abilities known in this damned world, and if she is hurt, she will repay in kind. Zazel introduces the girl as Dr. Ray, who has no last name, then calls her sister to come along and invites Ray to come with them. Rhea looks at the wounded gentleman and asks if she should save him. The lady replies that it's nothing serious, he was badly cut, and the cart fell off the cliff. Aslan is surprised that one could ask an assassin to save a person, and asks the doctor if she is planning to gather the homeless and sick and set up a shelter. The main character remembers that even in St. Plesia, Aslan screamed like that every time she saw Rhea. The lady suggests ending the conversation and asks the doctor about the gentleman's condition. Rhea explains that the wounds have been treated, but the cuts are deep, there is a risk of infection or tetanus, although the organs are not affected, and there will be a fever for several days. Rhea says that antibiotics need to be administered immediately to bring down the temperature, and that it is better to observe for now and then perform the operation. The lady says she took some medicine and tools from her booth, but it's not enough, so she'll go down to the village and get the rest. The main character objects, reminding that the man is wanted and believes that no one should know about his presence. The girl asks in surprise if they kidnapped him, and Aslan replies that it's not like that. The lady asks Rhea to stay out of people's sight and asks if she can look for herbs nearby. Rhea remembers that the operation requires anesthesia and says that she saw keitel leaves in the nearby forest. The girl adds that even with herbs you need an assistant, and notes that the lady will be uncomfortable watching this. The main character recalls how she once held intestines during surgery and assures that she can handle it. Zazel realizes that her savior is lucky and decides to do everything possible to ensure his survival, believing that his suffering will soon end. Aslan asks where she's going. She replies that she's looking for herbs and asks her sister to stay and protect the man. The silver-haired girl indignantly asks why the assassin is coming too, and why she can't. The main character thinks that if they go together, sooner or later each of them will grab a knife. Zazel tells his sister that he trusts her and asks her to look after him at least today, noting to herself that perhaps she feels something too. The lady understands that, looking at him now, a sadness appears in his eyes that was not there before. Aslan suggests making a stuffed animal out of it, believing that it could be sold profitably. Rhea asks what's wrong with her and hears the answer that they will bring the herbs themselves, and she just needs to keep an eye on the patient. Zazel says she likes the idea of a scarecrow because she doesn't know what else could happen, and admits it's strange coming from a doctor. Rhea replies that she doesn't mind, adding that it's a shame to limit herself to just skin, since a perfectly balanced body can be useful as a model. The The lady sharply orders them to move away, throws them both out of the room, and locks the door. Sazel turns to the boy and says that when he closes his eyes, he sees a world where his guts are being taken out. The gentleman recalls his childhood and the words of his father, who asked him if he considered himself worthy of ruling the Duchy of Urbios. Since childhood, he had heard that the right to be an heir was innate and not subject to doubt. The father told his son that if he didn't want to, he could refuse at any time. His Majesty advised him to see the wider world, to hear and try many things, and asked if he understood what the world was like now. The boy understood that his father's attitude towards the transfer of power was different, because he acted as if refusal was possible. Kartz believed that he could not refuse, because he was born with the blood of the duchy and the blessing of the goddess Sart, and his duty was carved in stone. The young gentleman asks his father if he made a mistake, feeling sad about his imminent return to the academy and the strained relationship. He asks if he missed something important, or made a mistake he doesn't know about. His Majesty replies that the only problem is that he has done nothing, and perhaps it is even for the best, since he is smart. The father says that the world he sees is not everything, and that soon he will grow up and must see what he has not seen before. The son asks why he says that. The father replies that if he doesn't say those words, no one else will. His Majesty adds that sometimes it is enough to understand everything at once. The main character says that this is a disgusting world, and if she lets her guard down, disaster will happen, and she doesn't know if she will survive in it. The girl turns to her sister and asks what she is doing. Sazel says it's been 2 days and asks if it's time for him to wake up. Rhea replies that it's too early, since he's heavily medicated. The doctor assures that the operation was successful and there will be no consequences, and the main character thanks the gods. Sazel looks at the cut eyebrow and asks what to do about the scar. Rhea replies that this is the limit of first aid, but later the scar can be removed with a magic ointment. Aslan asks what kind of relationship she has with him, and Rhea remarks that hiding a wanted man and treating him is a sign of complicated feelings. The girl tells her sister that she was worried, because after the carriage she turned pale, and it was obvious to her that there was something between them. The lady sharply replies that she was simply afraid that he would be put into eternal sleep, and assures that there is nothing between them. Aslan asks why she is so desperate to save a stranger, reminding her that she is not stupid. Sazel thinks she doesn't know what excuse to come up with, because saying she knows the future would make her look crazy. The lady explains that this man is a kind of insurance, and if you sow the seeds now, you can reap the fruits later. She adds that if he dies, the world will plunge into chaos, where they will not be able to survive in the usual way. The lady admits that it is difficult to explain such logic, and asks for patience until everything becomes clear. Aslan asks if it's definitely not self-interest, and why she's so concerned about the scar. She replies that it's out of humanity. The lady asks if it hurts to see a masterpiece or a work of art being ruined before our eyes. The lady asks her sister if she would like the knife mark on the stuffed animal, and then asks Rhea if she would be upset if her specimen was scratched. The main character is tired of explaining, but she feels that the girls understood her. Sazel says she's become disillusioned with men, and now for her there are only those she can fleece and those she can't. Aslan asks about this man, believing that there is nothing to take from him now, but that he may be useful in the future. The main character thinks that it is he who will lay the foundation as the savior of the world, and it is only important for her to direct the outcome. Aslan asks if she can stuff him if he doesn't wake up. The lady looks at her in surprise and asks what kind of person she is. Sazel notices that the gentleman just moved his fingers. Rhea insists that this is a mistake, because no one can wake up so quickly from such anesthesia. The main character decides that the doctor is right, and suggests covering him with a blanket. Suddenly, the lady screams that his eyelid twitched. Aslan is surprised, and asks why she's tormenting a man so deeply immersed in eternal sleep. Rhea says she's never seen anyone wake up after 2 days, and, theoretically, that would require taking dozens of poisons and changing the makeup of their blood from childhood. The doctor adds that if he is not from a family of assassins, then no family would do such a thing. The lady thought that if she looked closely, this man seemed to have grown up in love, and therefore it might have simply seemed unnecessary to her. Sazel asks if he'll remember anything if he suddenly wakes up. This clearly complicates things. She replies that if he never regained consciousness after the injury, then there can't be any memories. Rhea says that if the lady is still worried, he can take the medicine later, and hands him the bottle. She explains that it's a special oblivion potion made with her secret recipe, brought from home. The doctor adds that even one drop will erase all memories for about the last month. Hearing this, Aslan thinks it's great, because then she can sell it for a better price. Then she asks why they're looking at her like that, and declares she has no intention of taking the bottle back. The lady asks if she thinks that if she lives without brains, then everyone around her is the same. Sazel suggests they wait. Her sister asks if she's going to tell him he moved again. She objects and says the man hasn't come to yet. The lady says that is not the case, and she thought there was some sound outside. The gentleman asks if they are sure that there is no one else in the house. The man replies that this is a village where almost no one lives, and asks if they are here because of the recent carriage accident. The captain asks what he knows about this. The man looks at him in surprise, and the gentleman coldly remarks that people like him are unlikely to know anything. The knight reports to the captain that they've searched everywhere but found no trace. He asks if he's sure, adding that if not here, there's nowhere else to look. The captain is thinking about what to do next, because one person is waiting for a report from him. Heavy rain washed away the footprints and the carriage. They searched hotels and hospitals for several days, but found nothing but a torn piece of clothing. The captain thinks that in such a situation, they would have found at least a severed finger, and comes to the conclusion that the man seemed to have soared into the sky. The man cries out and says they've searched the foot of the mountain again, just in case. Then he looks at the house and asks what this place is. The guy replies that it's his shed. He explains that it's cooler in the mountains, so they store things that could spoil there, and adds that there are guests there now. Hearing this, the captain sharply reminds him that he was told there were no strangers in the village. The man insists they are merely noble ladies. The captain asks what the ladies are doing in such a place. He replies that they came to recuperate, adding that he doesn't know what they're looking for, but is certain they're innocent, as they're weak and ill. The gentleman tells him to shut his mouth and declares that he will check everything himself. Aslan, seeing the men, asks who they are and says her mistress is here. The man ignores her and orders her to get out of the way. The owner loudly asks if the lady is here and says that they will come in briefly to check. The captain calls him a blockhead and thinks it's funny that a noblewoman is recuperating in such a remote place. He's sure his eyes aren't deceiving him. The captain opens the door and orders the knights to search everything inside. Lying in bed, Sazel asks what all the noise is about. Seeing the man, she becomes indignant and asks how he dared enter without permission. The captain explains that they are looking for a certain person and he thought this would be the perfect place to hide him. The man notes women's clothing and signs of cooking, but sees no signs of a wounded person. The captain thinks that given the girls' build, they wouldn't have had the strength to drag and hide the wounded man. Sazel asks him to listen and says it is rude to search the house without even introducing himself. The captain replies that he suspected a hiding place, but it seems he was mistaken. He thinks all that remains is to check what's under the blanket. The gentleman comes closer and says that, apparently, she is seriously ill, since she did not get up in front of the guests. The main character replies that she sees no reason to get up for the rude man and ignoramuses who burst in uninvited. Sazel adds that she was not born into a family to tolerate such disrespect. The captain asks what family such a noble lady comes from if she lives in such a house. The lady replies that first let him say, "Who sent such a rude person as he?" The man gets angry and asks how dare she say that. Rhea looks at his mistress, as if asking if it is time to put him into eternal sleep, but he shakes his head slightly. The protagonist thinks there are too many enemies for hasty decisions. She trusts Aslan and Rhea, but understands that it would be easier to go it alone. The lady thinks she needs to protect the man under the blanket and doesn't understand why she feels like he's constantly moving. The captain asks what's wrong with her. She replies that she's wondering how much longer she has to endure this farce. The man says that if that is the case, then let her get up, and extends his hand to her, promising to help. Sazel slaps him sharply on the arm and tells him to put it away, saying that he crossed the line and didn't even let her get dressed properly. The lady asks if the situation is so serious that he didn't even reveal his family name. She says she hasn't seen the warrant, and if there's no explanation, she'll go to the capital herself. The captain thinks that it is clear from her speech that she is a noblewoman from the capital, and the problems will only increase. He understands that if rumors of a secret search begin to spread, whoever is behind it will be revealed instantly. The captain admits that he was hasty and acted rudely. The lady replies that this is the first time she has encountered such absurdity, and adds that her father will not leave it like that, because he knows everything. The main character understands that her father is long gone, but she thinks that the words still sound convincing. The knight quietly tells the captain that the situation could get even worse. The captain asks the lady for forgiveness if everything she said is true. The lady adds that next time they should bring a warrant or at least a seal if the case is honest. The captain orders the knights to return to the city and asks if they have replenished their water supplies. The knight replies that there was a well here. Everyone drank, and invites the captain to drink too, since there will be no water on the way. The captain drinks water and tells us to hurry, as we need to find out something. After they leave, the lady says that she needs to get out from under the blanket quickly, because she was too close to this man. Seeing the guy, the girl is surprised because he is lying completely motionless. Rhea says that now is not the time for this and insists that they need to leave immediately, otherwise the investigation will quickly expose the lie. She adds that only high-ranking nobles, like that count, live in this area. Rhea asks Aslan to get ready too and says that now is not the time for jokes. The sister replies that perhaps there's nothing to be done. The surprised girl asks what she's talking about. Sazel asks if she really did that. Aslan apologizes with a smile and says she didn't notice how her hands were used. After that, the group of men who had drunk Rhea's oblivion potion never showed up there again. According to her, they forgot the purpose of their visit, even before descending the mountain. The lady asks what will happen when the medicine wears off. The doctor replies that this is impossible, since the effect doesn't wear off without an antidote. Aslan says the forgetting medicine has run out and she doesn't know what to do next. The doctor replies that even a new one will require a week of infusion, and if the man wakes up earlier, there will be no way out. Rhea says that in a hurry they can administer another drug, but after strong anesthesia there is no guarantee that he will wake up, so all that remains is to prepare the medicine. The doctor thinks he has an idea who sent the rude people into oblivion and understands that there will be more such people. The main character wipes the gentleman's face, calls him a savior, and thinks about how much strength it takes to survive in this world. The master tells Sazel he must take care of her. She replies that it's enough to simply pay her the wages she deserves. The others left one by one, saying there was no hope. The protagonist realized that if she left too, there would be nowhere to go. The girl tells the owner she heard about payments to others, but not to her. He asks who exactly and claims it's a stab in the back. The man says that they have been working together for many years, asks if they are not a family, and whether it is worth arguing over pennies. Sazel replies that she hasn't paid her rent for 6 months, is almost being kicked out, and barely eats once a day. She spent all her savings and waited for her salary for 6 months of work, hoping, at least, for gratitude. The main character understands that she can only believe because she has neither the strength nor the confidence to argue with him. The owner says he is fed up with this and advises her to find an easier way, promising to take better care of her than this paltry payment. When he started pestering her, the girl saw a stone nearby and hit him. At that moment, she realized there was nowhere left to run and decided that this was the end. For the first time, she felt so stupid. Sazel doesn't understand why she can't express her feelings and thinks that she's only ruining other people's lives until the end. Waking up in the morning, she doesn't understand why she had such a dream and realizes that the years in prison have changed her. The lady considers this a turning point, not the end, because then her real life began. From that moment on, things began to happen that she needed to learn in order to survive in this world. Sazel thinks that if she had woken up later, she would have prayed for that bastard to end up in hell, and regrets waking up in time. She doesn't understand why she is here, and remembers that she fell asleep on a chair next to the bed. The girl thinks that someone was looking at her in the dark, but she understands that it couldn't have been the girls, because they were sleeping next to each other. The lady notices how the guy is drenched in sweat and thinks that today is the last time she will see this face, because he will wake up in a day or two. The lady thinks it's time to put him in his place and says that when he becomes a duke, he should repay this favor. Aslan asks if her sister is awake and suggests that she sleep a little longer. The lady asks why they got up so early and says that it is a long time before departure, offering to sleep together. Aslan looks at her and asks what she will do without them. Sazel asks what she's making up and says she has no intention of doing anything with the man. The girl asks why she keeps telling them to go to bed, and if she's going to leave while they're asleep. Aslan says she knows how it is, because their mother also promised to stay, but then disappeared. She admits that if the mistress leaves, she will have nowhere to go. Hearing this, the lady calls the girls to her, hugs them and says that they are now a family. The girl asks where they're going next, and if there's any room left. She replies that they still have 2 more family members to find. Aslan asks if it's necessary to look for them. The lady replies that once there are 5 of them, it will make sense. The main character thinks that affection is affection, but business remains business. Sazel reflects that if she wants to destroy the empire, she can't afford to miss out on any skill. The girl asks who they'll look for first. The lady replies that they need to find someone who can predict the future. Her name is Melissa. Aslan asks who's last. The lady replies that it's a girl who changes her face and personality every day and says that everything will become clear upon awakening. Sazel says her name is Theodora, and she can appear as a 70-year-old grandmother, a young woman, or a teenager. She's a master of disguise and can change her appearance freely. Only by the next morning does it become clear which personality she'll choose to live the day with. Thanks to her innate magic and observation skills, Theodora even perfectly copies their manner of speech. Sazel recalls her talking about her mother, an actress in a theater troupe. She said it seemed like her mother was quite famous. The girl doesn't know how famous her name was, but she is sure that her daughter has long surpassed her mother. The main character suggests starting with the one who's easier to find. She says one of them is currently in the southern city of Sambucus. The silver-haired girl is surprised that she's never been to the south before. Raya asks where they're heading next. Sazel replies that it could be any place where he can get rich. Marquis Cervantes says that things have gone so far that he can't even see his brother's face. The gentlemen ask how such a catastrophe could have happened and say he cannot mourn forever. They offer to give the late duke a proper burial. Hearing this, the man sharply replies that Kartzi has not yet been found and that a funeral cannot be held without a body. Viscount Sion claims that until at least a scrap of clothing is found, by order of the emperor, an official funeral is impossible. The Viscount emphasizes that this is the will of the emperor, and they must obey it. The Marquis asks if he didn't come all this way for the emperor's peace of mind. He reminds him that Kartz is his only nephew, and every possible location has long been searched. Cervantes says that no matter how hard it is, Karze is his only blood. He asks if they think he's greedy for wanting to bury his nephew next to his brother. The Viscount replies that the official search is not yet complete. The Marquis counters, saying it will end today at noon, and the funeral will take place. The Marquis reports that after the meeting at the building of the central government of Nuren, they will return to the capital and complete preparations. Viscount Sion says he knows the reason for this haste. Hearing this, the gentleman asks if he really looks like he is in a hurry, and who would even think of hidden intentions. The aristocrats insist that the Marquis simply cares for the empire and acts as a symbol of the Urbios family. The gentleman adds that the family needs a head to avoid unrest, and the closest by blood remains the Marquis. Zion calls this absurd and says that only a legitimate son can head a family, as the story of Sart says. The guy adds that the symbol of the Urbios family is a tradition given by the will of the goddess Sart. The aristocrat asks the Viscount if this is not inevitable, and says that the Marquis is acting for the sake of the empire. Cervantes asks for an end to the dispute and declares that his position is justified by the emperor's will. He emphasizes that he remains the closest relative. The Marquis invites the Viscount to meet at noon and advises him to prepare mourning clothes for Kars, after which he leaves. One of the nobles says he believes the Duke's son is alive. He wonders who would easily give up honors without the Duke's patronage. The Marquis asks to stop such conversations and says that otherwise they might think that he does not wish his nephew's life. The captain asks if it's all over today, saying the search won't stop without a body. The owner replies that finding just a finger is enough. The captain says there are no tracks at all. The Marquis dryly remarks that the man has 10 fingers. In the carriage, the girl complains that she's cramped and asks if they'll leave the gentleman there. She says it would be easier to take him to the door. Sazel replies that the journey is still far. The girl asks how much longer and hears that he is a man from another world and a future duke. The main character tells the guy that when he returns, he should live with dignity. Aslan asks if she's looking at him too openly, reminding him that there's nothing between them. The lady replies that she's never met such a quiet man who doesn't lie or hurt. Raya says he's simply straightforward. The lady adds that this is precisely why they can now part with warm memories. The girl asks if the guy will come if they leave him. The lady assures him that he will, because that's what Edgar said, and offers to take him down, as the Viscount's carriage will soon pass. Sazel strokes the boy's face and asks him to be more careful next time. Aslan laughs and says that he is a handsome brother, and if he ever falls into eternal sleep, his stuffed figure will be hers. The main character tells Kartzi to always be on guard and to doubt everything, be it blood or friendship. She adds that not all people in the world are like her and wishes him luck. The Viscount, seeing the Duke, asks if everything is all right with him and says that he's survived by the will of the goddess Sart. Zion admits that he doesn't understand whether it was a dream or reality, and that at dawn he couldn't take his eyes off it. He asks if the Duke knows how helpless he felt while preparing the funeral. The Viscount is interested in how it all happened, since he only heard about the carriage leaving. Kartse asks about his father's secretary. He is told that he passed away that morning, feeling guilty. The guy says that if he had known about the master's return, he would not have made this choice. The Duke replies that he did the right thing. The butler asks where he's been all this time, since there were no traces of him at all. The butler says he's already sent a letter to the emperor. Kartse apologizes for the worry. The Viscount says the Duke is not at fault and will now officially become the head of Erbios. Zion says he should have seen the Marquis's face upon hearing the news and believes he would have tried to swallow the family. Kartse replies that all the right people already know. He notes that many have forgotten how well the former Duke treated them. The Viscount thinks the new Duke is strong, sober, and unyielding. Even the Academy's teachers were amazed by his steadfastness and faithfulness to his path. Zion feels that such a person is inspiring and asks the Duke to tell him everything if he remembers anything. Dvoretsky agrees, saying the treatment was nearly perfect. They decide to find whoever was behind it as soon as possible. Zion asks if anything comes to mind. The Duke replies that he doesn't remember anything. The butler says that even a small detail will help, but the Duke assures that the memory is empty. Zion says the matter cannot be abandoned and tells of a witness who saw the carriage leaving. He said that there were 2 or 3 girls with the coachman, and one of them was a dazzling beauty. The gentleman says that the images will be spread throughout the empire, and it is only a matter of time. The butler notices that the Duke has risen and asks him to wait for the doctor. The Duke replies that the wounds have healed and is only worried about the scar on his eyebrow. Dvoretsky says he has already completed preparations for his return to the capital. The Duke asks to wait, as he wants to find one person. Meanwhile, the main character in southern Halima enjoys the heat, which was not present in the north. The lady says that many herbs grow only here and calls it beautiful. Aslan angrily asks how to explain a week's journey to the south. Raya replies that the irritation is justified and asks if the lady is going to reveal her identity. The doctor says that it would be easier with a nobleman's pass and asks why hide. The main character replies that this is not the case and thinks that soon they themselves will become wanted. The lady suggests changing the names and asks if it wouldn't be more convenient. The girl is worried about her pass, her last name, and what to say about her family. Zazel asks why anyone should ask her that at all. The lady replies that there are people who do such things. In the southern slums lived Melissa, a child prodigy with a perfect memory who didn't even have books. She copied fairy tales from her friends and therefore had the most collections, but she was unhappy. Her parents hated the village and threatened to burn everything she wrote. One day a man appeared and offered to buy books. From that day on, the parents were overcome with greed, and Melissa was locked up and forced to work. Over time, she forged not only books but also documents, certificates, and orders. Melissa became a genius at forgery, perfectly recreating everything down to the paper and color. This wasn't enough for the parents, so they opened a printing house, producing art-quality counterfeits. Even the court could not determine the exact number of counterfeits and named the figure at 10,000. In prison, Melissa said that by the age of 10, she had sold 10,000 documents and saw no difference between the world and a cage. She said she hadn't seen the sun, but she felt better behind bars because people listened to her. Aslan is surprised how such a smart girl ended up in prison. Melissa explains that she was caught not for counterfeiting, but for another reason. Zazel asks what she did. Melissa replies that she filed certificates of her parents' eternal sleep. She says she filled out documents for living people and received life sentences without personally putting anyone into eternal sleep. Overnight, the parents became dead souls, deprived of home and work. No one listened to their words, neither the neighbors nor the authorities. Broken and embittered, they went into the river themselves. Formally, this was recognized as immorality and counterfeiting, which still led to a life sentence. Despite this, Melissa was happy until she was put into eternal sleep. She said that for the first time, she felt needed by her family. The main character knew that she would meet her again, because she shines so brightly that she is immediately visible. Zazel looks at the blue-haired girl and realizes they've met again. She asks where she's going. Melissa replies that she is in a hurry to get to the government office before it closes. The main character calls her by name. Melissa is surprised and asks if the mistress would like to offer her a job. Sazel looks at the document and says it is convincing but has errors, explaining about the color of the ink. The lady adds that natural dyes need to be mixed correctly for the ink to be permanent. At this moment, the blue-haired girl wondered why the lady didn't look surprised at all. The main character notices that the handwriting is disgusting, the seal is sloppy, and calmly asks if she has never seen what a district court seal actually looks like. Melissa wonders how she could have seen it at all, and wonders who would show such things to a child. Sazel asks if the girl would like to study properly. The parents enthusiastically declare that the lady has a diamond eye and she made the right choice. The main character suggests that they talk less and just recalculate to see if everything adds up. The father declares that she is still buying the child, who will bring in a good profit. The lady asks them to hurry up with the calculations and asks if they understand the deal they are making. The parents snap at her, asking if she thinks they are fools, and suggest that they take this toadstool away as quickly as possible. Sazel says that they will never see her again, will not talk to her, will not take an interest in her life, and will not even dare to think about her. The lady warns them that if they suddenly change their minds and come looking for the child, other ladies will deal with them. The father replies that she's worrying too much and assures them he understands everything. The lady considers the matter closed and asks the girl if she has anything to say. She replies that she has nothing to add. Sazel invites Melissa to come with them. A few days later, she tells the girl that she's applying to the academy, a small but prestigious institution. The lady says that the training will take 3 years, and after graduation she will be able to do whatever she wants, within the law, of course. At this moment, the main character thinks that at least one person from this family should live seeing bright sunlight. Since ancient times, it was believed that a family had a duty to help a child develop their abilities. But this child, even locked in a tiny room, managed to shackle the public affairs of the entire empire. Sazel is already thrilled with the remarkable and talented person she will become with the right training, and is confident that they will help her formalize her personal information. Aslan asks her sister why she's so happy after throwing away so much money, and inquires about how much she gave to her parents. At first glance, it seems like a considerable sum, and she wonders if it was all spent. The lady replies that everything is already over and does not understand why this topic should be raised again. The sister is sarcastic, whether she is naive or just stupid, and asks how she is going to live on. The lady calmly explains that now she will have to earn money for food. Melissa has 3 years left until graduation. The protagonist understands that she won't give up and remain inactive, having been deceived more than once. But there's no need to hunt for prey herself. Sazel is sure that not even a week will pass before someone wants to deceive them appears. Beautiful girls from the north, unemployed and without guardians, seemingly well off, easily create the image of naive fools. The lady understood that they were perfect victims for scammers, and all they had to do was wait. The main character tells her sister that she looks like a real villain now. Raya replies, "That's not how villains usually look." Suddenly, the girl notices a news item in the newspaper about the search for men for the assassination attempt on the custodian of the empire, Duke Erbios, and wonders if they are the ones depicted there. Aslan laughs, wondering if such kidnappers really even exist. The lady, however, thinks the shaggy man in the drawing looks suspiciously like her. The main character decides it's even better if their faces remain unknown. The newspaper also reports that Duke Erbios is returning as the guardian of the empire. Sazel believes that this is how it should be, and now he must repay for saving him. 3 years later, in the capital of the Sart Empire, an assistant asks the Duke why he did what he did, and reminds him how long the emperor waited for his return. 3 years ago, no one doubted that Karze would succeed the former Duke and become the empire's prime minister. Despite his youth, his pedigree and abilities were impeccable. The Viscount does not understand how the gentleman could refuse such a high post and leave again for another country. During these 3 years, His Majesty personally defended the Duke's position, with difficulty resisting the Marquis's fierce faction. Karze says that if a position is based solely on persuasion and coercion, it's too unstable. Sion asks why he then refused to assist the emperor again at the audience. The Duke replies that he said he would think about it and give an answer later, and asks if that is much different from a refusal. The Viscount reminds him that His Majesty held this position with great difficulty for 3 years, and asks if he understands how influential the Marquis has become and how many people have followed him. The Marquis notices the Duke and says it appears the audience is over. He adds that they haven't seen each other for a long time and, upon hearing of his arrival at the palace, hastened here. Kartzi says he is glad to meet and explains that he has been swamped with work, having to take on important decisions for the empire. The red-haired man asks how much effort the Marquis has put in during this time, believing that age brings wisdom. The Marquis replies that over the years, he has come to understand the importance of family and bloodline. The Duke says he's sorry. The red-haired man is surprised and asks why. The gentleman points at his finger and warns him to be careful, because the world is a dangerous place. The Marquis notes that his audience seems to have dragged on, and apparently the Emperor has offered him a special position. He adds that no matter how hard he tried to fill the vacancy, his efforts were insufficient for the Emperor. Ervante says he heard that the Emperor was going to appoint another man to the post of Prime Minister, and he believes that His Majesty had actually decided to give the position to him. The Duke replies that this is not a position that can be easily given or taken away. The man says that his uncle knows this better than anyone and announces that it is time for him to leave. Ervante calls him a cheeky boy, who, even after his father plunged into eternal sleep, wandered the world as he pleased and never changed. The Marquis thought he was eager for the position, but seeing his resolute refusal, he thought he should be glad to know his place. The captain tells the gentleman that this isn't the only thing to worry about. He asks what he means. The man explains that rumor has it that His Majesty has secretly summoned Princess Ivona from her villa in Ihan in the east. Hearing this, Ervante remembers that the princess is the only daughter of the former emperor and the sister of the current one, and wonders if she is destined for Karza. A marriage alliance was an obvious and common move in the aristocracy. If the princess and Duke Urbios united, the balance of power would shift. The Marquis said things couldn't remain as they were. The Duke wonders why the imperial palace's discipline has slackened. Sion suggests it's Rudian, a low-born nobleman whose thirst for glory has made him the Marquis's loyal dog. The Viscount believes that the Duke gave them a fitting rebuff, knowing that he sometimes makes such warnings. Zion thinks that honest men like the Master rarely put hidden meaning into their words. But even so, it's better than nothing, since the princess will be arriving soon. They could have been engaged initially, and their meeting is only a short time away. The Viscount understands that they are graduates of the same academy and are perfectly suited to each other. Kartzi glanced at him and asked if everything was all right. He assured her it was, but wondered if the Duke was too indifferent to the opposite sex and would hardly be happy with the marriage. Zion believes they need to keep their mouths shut now to avoid making mistakes before the meeting. He adds that the Marquis's behavior makes it clear they can't delay any longer. The Viscount argues that even if the post of Prime Minister is difficult to accept, the Duke should have at least one official position at court. Kartza agrees. Sion adds that, holding any position, it will be easier for him to deal with the nobles, and asks him to let her know if anything interests him. Zion says there are many other positions, and if you want a quiet position, you can choose any other than this one. However, the gentleman replies that it is precisely this that is needed, since there is something to profit from there. For the past 3 years, the southern region has been abuzz with constant incidents. The useless island of Urkana, at the southernmost border, was considered the empire's finest resort. People appeared there making fortunes by literally selling water and air. Meanwhile, influential families in the south often went bankrupt overnight. There were also famous womanizers who broke the hearts of young ladies. But opinions about the main figure in all these scams varied. Some said she was a beautiful widow from the capital, others a pure and sincere lady, resembling a fairy. There were also rumors of a strange woman raising her younger sister. A man approaches Lady Cecilia and demands that she hurry up and return the sum he entrusted to her. The girl looks at him in surprise and asks what he's talking about. He explains that he's referring to the leather bag he left behind 2 days ago, which contained at least 100 gold bars. The lady pretends to hear about this for the first time. He smiles and asks her not to pretend. The man says that it seems she has forgotten, and asks if he didn't explain everything before when he talked about the business. The woman reminds him that according to the agreement, he receives dividends on the 10th of each month, and that she invested 20 gold bars then. The lady asks if he didn't receive the interest for the first month, and if he remembers how happy he was that day. The man is glad that she remembered and offers to take the bars from the bank vault and invest them as well, reminding her that she has another 300. The lady replies that it's true and that it's all an inheritance from her father. He reminds her that to get it, she needs to deposit the 100 bars he lent her 2 days ago. The lady states that she has no intention of doing this and refuses to invest, explaining that she is not chasing quick riches. The gentleman is dissatisfied and says that if this were a scam, he would have paid the dividends immediately. She replies that she knew he wasn't a fraudulent assassin, so she accepted the money as the principal and interest. The lady explains that out of the 100 bars, 20 are her own, and the remaining 80 are considered interest per month at an annual rate of 5,000%. Hearing this, the man calls it all complete nonsense. The lady shows the contract, which states that on the 10th, if the obligations are not fulfilled, the deposit will be confiscated, and asks if it is his signature at the bottom. The man, shocked, asks if this is a scam. She asks if he was trying to steal her money. The gentleman denies it, insisting he intended to return everything. The girl thanks him for the return and says that since everything is settled, they can go their separate ways. The man screams, calling what is happening absurd and a fraud from the very beginning, insults her, and threatens, assuring her that he will not leave her alone. Aslan suddenly appears and threatens him with a knife. He realizes he's lost, calls the girls the devil's spawn, and runs away in panic. Aslan says the sword grows longer every time it absorbs the red liquid, and she wanted to test it. Sazel replies that she's done this many times before. The main character says that she has called all the debtors and offers to take 40 bars and distribute them to them, since the initial capital still needs to be returned. The sister doesn't understand why she needs to return the money and asks why she's pretending to be kind. She adds that because of her, they're called noble robbers. Sazel asks her to stop talking nonsense and think about what will happen to the victims if they can't get their money back. The lady believes there are no born villains. Deprived of their property, people lose their minds and have nothing to fear. She asks if things will improve if the number of their enemies increases. The main character is sure that there must be good people left in the world to maintain balance. Rhea says that he should have been given medicine, because even the forgetting potion would have left him deathly ill for several days until he completely forgot what happened. Sazo believes it's all over now, and it's impossible to report such people anyway. The doctor says that complaining would only bring them losses. The reason girls are called noble robbers is because they only rob bad people. And when big money is involved, mistakes are unacceptable. Rhea and Aslan covered their tracks with drugs and a knife. Their motto was, as if nothing had happened. They selected the best prey and disappeared, pretending to be naive con artists. The main character offers them champagne, believing they've worked hard for 3 years. There are no more people left in this city to rob. The lady says that this is their last day in the South, and it should be celebrated properly. The girl suggests her sister focus on something big, not small. She asks how they'll achieve their goal if they continue like this, and whether she's forgotten what their goal is. Melissa says that now everything is ready. She can forge any document and control the laws. The main character thinks she wasn't this happy, even after graduating with top grades and passing the civil service exam. She feels the same way she did back then. In St. Plecia, Melissa reports that she has found out everything about the documents of the National Office for Missing Children. She explains that the archives of the Imperial Palace's Human Resources Department contain data on shelters, homeless people, and wanderers, all of which are recorded in the records. Melissa says she got a job in a department that collects information about people so that when they arrive in the capital, she immediately knows where the child she needs is. The lady says she could have found a better place, but because of her. The girl interrupts and replies that she probably has her own reasons for looking for this man. Sazel agrees, saying they just need to find one more person, and then they'll be the perfect family. She remarks that the HR department sounds like a silver lining, where officials live out their retirements in peace. The lady believes that it is in such a place that it is easiest to keep everything under control, and she is sure that it is run by someone without money, experience, or real will. Melissa announces that her boss will be that same famous duke. Hearing this, the main character is genuinely surprised. At this time, the boy turns to the duke and says that from that moment on, he has learned everything. The young master asks if he didn't ask to be called brother. The boy indignantly asks how dare he. The duke replies that there's nothing wrong with it, allows him to call him that, and asks if there are any other difficulties. The boy says that the duke is looking after him well, and asks if he can be of use to him. The young gentleman replies that it is enough for him to simply remain himself. The butler, observing the gentleman, thinks that he is a surprisingly kind person, and notices that after returning to the capital, he often met with the children of the Erbios family's blood. The only direct heir is Duke Karzi, but he also has cousins, including Cedric, an intelligent and capable student. The butler reports letters awaiting reply. The Duke asks who they're from. The servant explains that Princess Ivana has returned and offers to arrange a meeting. The man thinks that the content of the letter is clear, because dozens of messages with marriage proposals arrive every day. The butler reflects that it is at least good that the letters go through him first, since it is difficult for the head of the family, who does not want to marry, to read such things. The Duke asks if that's all. The servant replies there's one more letter. Opening it, the gentleman asks for something stronger, not tea. Meanwhile, a man at the bar says he's glad to see Duke Urbios back. His friend replies that he's now permanently settled in the capital. The man wonders who else will protect the empire, if not the Urbios family. Hearing this, the main character understands that this very handsome man must be the defender of the empire. A guy suddenly approaches the girl and asks what she keeps muttering, adding that she looks good, and the South has clearly done her good. The lady asks him to quickly tell her what he learned at her request. He replies that he's found out everything he can for 3 years, but there are no leads. The man says he checked shelters and slums, and before, it was easy to find girls using her information. But now there is no information at all. The guy adds that there are rumors that her sister got a job in the Human Resources Department and asks if it wouldn't be better to look there. The main character thinks that Kartse is perfect in everything except his reluctance to take a high position and recalls that she used to always get the information she needed for money. Sazel doesn't understand why a man with such a fortune chose this path, because even without becoming prime minister, he could have taken a high position. The protagonist thinks the Duke would be better off in any other position. She recalls how she narrowly saved him and now feels shackled. The original plan was simple: find Theodora and pull off a major scam that would last her a lifetime. But the lady understands that if the Marquis gains power, things will be difficult for them. He will destroy the system, install his own people, and rule the empire as he sees fit. Sazel wonders why she's even worried about this man, since there's little time left to find Theodora and pull off the big scam. The girl understands that the capital is huge, and if you look around carefully, there are plenty of fools here. The main character notices Duke Urbios passing by, and the guy asks why she suddenly became so nervous. Edgar says that since the conversation is over, he'll be leaving. She asks if the Duke has much to do, then immediately asks him to pretend he didn't hear anything. When the guy is already leaving, the girl stops him and reminds him that he said that the Duke has no family and is not greedy. Edgar confirms this, but adds that there are things in this world that one should not touch. The main character thinks that no matter how much she's in a hurry, she can't touch the Duke. He has a lot of money, he's simple-minded, but he doesn't fit her criteria. Sazel realizes that the Duke is clearly not so stupid that he can be easily robbed. Edgar says she'd better give in, since the Duke already has a lover. The lady doesn't understand what he means. The guy asks if she knew about his meeting with the niece of the Marquis of Ervante. The girls stand on the street and look at the Duke's carriage. Melissa notices that the capital is completely different from her hometown. Even the designs on the carriages are different. Rhea says that Melissa will definitely meet Duke Urbios in person someday. The doctor looks at her sister and asks what's wrong with her, if she's angry again because only Melissa is being praised. Aslan replies that not at all, and adds that she doesn't need anyone's praise at all. Rhea says Melissa will be working alongside Duke Urbios and asks if that's why she's jealous. She assures her that's not the case. The girl says she is sure she has seen a similar coat of arms before, although the shape was different. Rhea reminds Aslan that they were born and lived in the north, then were in the south, and asks how she could see the Duke from the capital. The silver-haired girl clarifies that she did not say that she saw the Duke, but only noticed the same coat of arms with wings. Rhea asks when exactly this happened. Aslan irritably asks why she is suddenly being interrogated and who gives anyone the right to doubt her words. Melissa suggests they take a break for a moment, warning them that she won't be held accountable if anyone gets hurt. Sazel says that if they make a fuss, there will be no mercy. Aslan tells her sister that she should have come earlier because they saw something interesting. The lady says she knows who passed by. The sister, surprised, asks if she saw him too. Sazel smiles and says it's their future son-in-law. The Viscount asks if the window should be closed. The Duke replies there's no need. Sion remarks that the noise is understandable, since this is their first time arriving secretly. The assistant believes that the townspeople are glad to see the gentleman and suggests that if he wants to show himself to the people, he should ride on horseback. The Duke replies that this is unacceptable. The butler suggests that there might be something interesting outside. Suddenly, the man hears swearing and notes that these are female voices behaving too freely. The assistant notices that the gentleman is sweating, hands him a napkin, and asks if the voices bother him. The man talks about a meeting with the Marquis's niece, noting that the time has not been set, but that the other party has already reminded him more than once. The butler adds that they were also rushed and asks if the gentleman is in any trouble. Kartsa decides to set up a meeting, believing that the time has come. Aslan asks the lady what she plans to do and whom she plans to marry. She replies, Duke Erbios. The girls scream in shock and ask if she has gone crazy and if she understands who he is. Saisal says she slept in the same bed with him a few nights, which is true, and asks what they were thinking. Aslan remembers how she once dragged a man into the barn and looked after him for several days, and now she has set her sights on the Duke. The sister suggests coming up with a more realistic plan, for example, simply kidnapping him. The girls are amazed and wonder if this is really considered realistic. Raya agrees with Aslan and asks what will happen if they make a mistake and the wrath falls upon them, because such people cannot reach it. Sazel objects, saying she not only touched him, but also cut his stomach. Raya, shocked, asks what she's talking about. The lady adds that she and Aslan carried him on their own. The girl, astonished, asks what kind of nonsense this is. Aslan suddenly remembers the coat of arms and says that it was Erbios, carriage. Rhea is shocked to realize that the man was Duke Erbios and asks why the truth was revealed like this and why they weren't told sooner. Sazel explains that otherwise she wouldn't be sitting idly by. Rhea asks how she even found out about him and brought him there. The lady replies that it would take too long to explain. Aslan asks if it's true that his sister prepared everything in advance, intending to rob him now, and says that he's starting to respect her. Rhea says she thought they were just doing a good deed, but it turned out to be a major plan. Sazel replies that not so much, adding that if he lived the way she wanted, they would never have met, and wonders what to do if he is digging his own hole. The main character says that she is not stupid, and that it was she who saved his life, and asks if they really think that she will allow another girl to take him away. The lady thinks that this should not happen, and believes that after 3 years of active scams, only she has the right to enjoy the fruits of her labor. Sazel suggests pretending they donated 10,000 gold pieces to a charity to help those in need. Aslan says he can't imagine such a thing. The lady explains that this is just an example and asks, what if the middleman appropriated the investment out of pure good faith? The sister replies that she will return the money with interest and demand compensation for moral damages. The lady says that this is exactly what we are talking about and asks to listen carefully. Sazel asks if she was looking to play for high stakes and if there is anyone in the empire richer than Duke Erbios. The lady turns to Rhea and asks if he abandoned the princess to meet the niece of a man who wished him ill. What does she think of it? She replies that he's a fool. The lady agrees completely and asks Melissa who will be the first to learn about the missing child. She replies, Duke Erbios. Sazel agrees and says that this is their only chance to get information and grab more before leaving the empire. Rhea admits that it is difficult for her to imagine this because it seems there are no loopholes or gaps. The main character understands that it will be difficult and not everything will go according to plan, and asks if they are ready for this. The lady says there are 2 paths: to give up before you even start, or to fight to the end, without regret, even if the task proves impossible. She asks which they choose. The girls answer that they will fight to the end. The lady comes to the fortune teller and says that she wants to know if everything will be all right between her daughter and the Duke. The woman, stroking the circle, says she'll take a look. The mistress remarks that she doesn't believe such a thing, but she's heard it's popular these days. The lady says that their family is in no way inferior to the ducal one, and that everyone in Sarthe knows their impeccable reputation. The fortune teller screams and asks where this lie came from. The mistress is indignant and asks if she knows who she's talking to. The woman asks how Madame dares to lie, knowing whom she serves, and says that serious problems are looming over their family. The fortune teller says she will look more closely and claims that her husband has 3 hidden children. The lady, astonished, asks how this is possible. The woman asks him to wait and says that there's more to come. The fortune teller asks what he has done this time and says that the clouds are leading her to the blue roofs on 17th Street. The lady asks for this to be kept secret. The fortune teller assures that such matters are confidential. The woman in the purple dress says that a dark cloud hung over the entire empire, but the goddess helped, and her daughter escaped the disaster. The lady asks if she's talking about Rubia. She replies no, The clouds are heading toward Fernhardt's first street. The Marquis says that if this is the first street of Fernhardt, then Duke Urbios is there, and asks if the woman understands that today's conversation is a secret. When the ladies left, the girl asked with a smile what other secrets remained. She noted that the Biani mother and daughter were the most talkative, and now, in 2 days at most, all of this would be spread far and wide. The protagonist asked if there were any more rumors worth spreading. Aslan replied that they were more than just rumors and recalled the expressions on their faces, assuring them that they would turn a trifle into a huge sensation. The girl remarked that nobles only believed what they found convenient to believe. The lady agreed, saying it was the pure truth. Salzo suggested that the girls take the gold coins, realizing that it was thanks to the children that Aslan had become famous as the best fortune teller in just 2 weeks. The main character decided that childish conversation was far more effective than any male. In a short time, she could easily become famous in the alleys, taverns, and shopping districts. Aslan added that the mother and daughter would embellish the rumors even more, since there were no people left who didn't know the story about the Duke's first wife. The girl said that now it is presented as a curse, as if anyone who marries the Duke of Urbios will be plunged into eternal sleep for a year. Aslan asked if this wasn't absurd and wondered what fools would believe such nonsense. The protagonist silently congratulated herself on having entrusted this task to her sister, considering it a perfect fit for her talents. The girl told the lady it was time to get back to work and asked about her plans. She replied that since the curse already existed, it needed to be made a reality. The red-haired lady asked if the ladies had heard the latest news, and then immediately pointed out that she really shouldn't talk about it. Karina asked if this was connected with His Excellency the Duke, since she still doesn't believe rumors without evidence. The lady replied that Karina was right and added that there was talk of a strange spiritual energy in the Duke's house, which was why ladies did not stay there for long, but this was the first time she had heard such rumors. The red-haired girl stated that she had heard that even vicious thoughts about the Duke could bring a curse, and was outraged by such nonsense. The lady replied that she had never even entertained such thoughts and couldn't understand how anyone could think such a thing about a duke. Her friends supported her, adding that a future duchess must possess innate dignity. The lady offered them some tea, but after taking a sip, she spat out the red liquid. Suddenly, the ladies who had come to see her found themselves stained as well. Rhea thought it wasn't blood at all, and couldn't understand why everyone was screaming. She knew the red color was due to the reaction of the cookie residue with the tea leaves, and that the stains would disappear by the time the guards arrived. Rhea said there shouldn't be any pain, and asked why they were making so much noise. The protagonist replied that it didn't matter. The important thing was that everything worked, and now word of the curse would spread even further. Kartsa asked the lady if she had enjoyed the tea. She replied that the aroma was so wonderful that she hadn't even noticed how much she'd been enjoying it. The gentleman said he was glad to hear it, and Julia added that drinking tea with the Duke was a real pleasure. At this point, the lady thought that she had to continue in the same spirit because this place had been prepared for her with great difficulty, and for this she had turned the whole house upside down and even begged Entrevante. The lady convinced Julia that by becoming the Duchess of Urbios, she would have the whole world at her feet, and by uniting the forces of the families, they would own not only money, but the entire empire. The girl understood that their duchy, Mimashia, was one of the few powerful families, and she decided that money and power weren't all that important. What mattered most was becoming the first lady of high society, and no longer bowing to the princess. Julia remarked that the Duke was handsome, and it would be nice to have such a man by her side. The gentleman asked why she was smiling, and she replied that she had remembered a funny rumor from social circles. After drinking the tea, the girl realized she wasn't vomiting red liquid or writhing in pain. She decided it had all been a fantasy, and she had been afraid for nothing. Julia said she found this curse ridiculous. The gentleman was surprised and asked what she was talking about. The lady explained that she realized it was just a fairy tale and added that they said all the ladies around him saw a red liquid. Kartsi was surprised to hear this. The girl noticed that his face showed he was hearing about it for the first time. Julia said that they say that one should not harbor ill intentions towards the Duke, and she wondered who came up with such a rumor. The girl added that if a person goes against the goddess's will with evil intentions, they will definitely see a red liquid, and sometimes the bride seems to be covered by a whole stream. She suggested they take a look at her, as she was fine. Suddenly, Karzi spat out a red liquid and asked if she was talking about the curse, remarking that he now understood how it manifested. The news that Lady Julia was led out of the tea room with foam on her face spread like wildfire. Eyewitnesses reported that she was in shock, trembling, and barely able to stand. Through the help of street children, the story changed, and now they said the lady was drenched in red liquid and began to convulse. A famous fortune teller finally declared it a curse. Aslan said that she could no longer return there, since the Duke's soldiers were already on duty near the fortune teller's house, although she admitted that it was interesting and she even felt a little sorry. Rhea added that it was also new to her to make money by spilling red liquid. The main character said that, in any case, they both did a great job. The sister asked what the next step would be, as now was clearly no time to relax. Aslan declared that all the competition had now been eliminated and asked if it was time for the bride to appear. The lady asked Melissa if she was ready to give what was asked and invited her to listen carefully as she began to tell a story about the northern town of Paran. She described Baron Farzan's eldest daughter, Iris, with her chestnut hair and gentle disposition, a gentle girl with a shining smile who does not give up despite difficulties, and said that it was she. The main character asked them how they liked her smile and whether it seemed friendly. The girls replied that she really did seem like a completely different person. The lady explained that this was the result of acting, which the great master taught her, telling her to cast aside her shyness and become the image she had in her head. Aslan suggested using her real name, believing that no one in town knew who she was or where she was from anyway. Sazel replied that she would like that too, but she had already done too much. Aslan asked if Baron Farzan even existed. The lady explained that it was the surname of her uncle's family, which had once sold the title. His father had bought the title and given it to his illegitimate uncle, so he had never been proud of it. The main character said there was no need to worry, showed the documents, and added that Melissa had done everything as close to the original as possible. Sazel announced that she was now a lady, having arrived from the village only a month ago. Aslan, having read the documents, indignantly asked why she was listed as a servant, and Melissa as a relative. The lady explained that Melissa was an elite woman, while Aslan was the younger sister who had achieved everything through hard work, and that this was the kind of story that adults liked the most. She added that Raya was a childhood friend and the daughter of the late nanny, who knew how to cook, heal, and do many other things, and asked if they remembered everything. Sazel explained that after their family was broken up in the north, they had nowhere to go, and thanks to Melissa's work in the government, they came here, trying to survive together as a family. The lady said that she heard about the search for a bride for the Duke in order to drive out the supreme evil, and decided to try for the sake of her loved ones. Aslan was dubious, saying the story was too hackneyed and reminiscent of an old theater play, and she doubted whether it would work on the Duke. The main character asked who said it was for the Duke. The girl was surprised and asked who the object of the marriage was then. The bishop complained to the butler about his worries and asked what was going on, since such strange rumors were circulating around the Duchy of Erbios. The priest suggested that he might also be to blame, and added that the best way to dispel the rumors was to marry the Duke as soon as possible. He said that one cannot simply watch, because even a sham marriage will eventually dispel the curse. The butler agreed, but noted that rumors had already spread throughout Vierne, and it was unclear whether there would be a family willing to give up their daughter. The bishop promised to pray to the goddess for his peace of mind. Suddenly, the butler noticed the girl and was surprised, not knowing her family. The priest said she was Lady Iris, recently arrived in the capital from the baron's family. The butler noted that since she was coming to pray in the morning, she must have a strong desire. The priest countered, saying she wasn't the type to seek such a thing. The bishop added that she has difficult family circumstances and she constantly thinks about her loved ones, noting that such ladies are rare these days. The main character prayed, asking the goddess to protect her family, and cried. The butler came up, handed me a handkerchief and told me not to worry, then sat down next to me and asked if I was disturbing him. He admitted that he had overheard her prayer and asked if something had happened to her family. The girl replied that she was the only one left from her family, but she had people who had become her family. Sazel said she wasn't lonely or struggling, wondering if he would believe her, because she looked exhausted and alone. The gentleman thought she must be having a hard time and asked if she had a place to live. She replied that it didn't matter. The girl noted that the basement room was enough to live with a family and take care of them, remembering that before they rented a room and lazed around. Sazel admitted that she hadn't expected to find herself in this situation and said that he reminded her of her grandfather, so she told him everything, thanked him, and was about to leave. The butler asked her to wait and carefully asked if he could talk to her for a little while. Kartzi checked with his assistant if she was really there. He confirmed it and wondered if he had been hasty in bringing her. The butler said rumors don't last forever, and even the bishop called her a sweet woman. The gentleman asked what kind of person she was and was told she was beautiful and graceful. The assistant added that despite the difficulties, she retained a gentle smile and dignity, and the gentleman noted the flow of compliments. Kartzi asked why he never saw her on Sundays, since he himself never missed church after returning. The butler explained that she came on quiet days on purpose, avoiding the crowds. The gentleman decided that her goal was peace in the family, unlike those who came for the spectacle. The Duke asked if she had mentioned difficulties. The butler replied that she had people she was responsible for, even though they weren't related. The gentleman joked about whether she was going to take in someone else, surprised by his own words. The butler noted that they could hardly have met before, since he lived outside the empire, and she had just arrived from the wilderness. The assistant reported that she was already at the mansion and asked if the gentleman would like to meet her. The butler reminded about the Marquis Ervante, who would try to take advantage of the rumors after his failure with Julia. The assistant said that sooner or later they would have to enter into a real marriage anyway, and it was better to dispel the rumors now. Kurtze clarified that it was a fictitious marriage and agreed to proceed as such. The butler noted that even the head of the house would not be happy with such a union and offered to at least look at her face, saying that the lady was waiting. The Archduke was surprised to learn that she was waiting for him and heard that this was a marriage contract and that a meeting was inevitable. The assistant offered to explain everything to the lady if this was unacceptable, but the gentleman said that there was no way out. Aslan said with delight that they had succeeded. After all, this was the living room of the Urbios Duchy, and admitted that her sister had surpassed her. Suzel thanked her for the praise. Aslan said she'd become the perfect lady and asked if that was scary, and the heroine remembered that she used to live exactly like that. Aslan asked when the Duke would arrive, noting that they themselves had offered the contract. The lady reprimanded her, reminding her that it was the Duke. The main character noticed how her sister hid the precious brooch and sharply asked her to return it to its place. Aslan said with displeasure that this was boring. The lady reminded her to be careful, as there was one last obstacle remaining. She explained that there was still a final trap ahead, and suddenly, the Duke might remember them. The silver-haired girl assured him that this wouldn't happen, as Rhea had given him a small dose of medicine. The protagonist felt a strange tingling sensation in her heart, deciding it was her conscience. Sazo thought that perhaps it was because Karze was the same man she had saved, and that he wasn't so bad after all. The butler asked how long she had been waiting. The lady inquired where the Duke was, and was told he would be arriving soon, and that he was a quiet, taciturn man. Hearing this, the main character remembered how she checked if he was breathing by putting her fingers to his nose. The butler warned her that the news of the marriage was sudden and asked her to understand if the Duke was harsh. The girl agreed, thinking that his entire body was harsh. He added that he'd be leaving the office in a hurry and wouldn't be particularly dressed up. The lady said it wasn't a problem, recalling how he'd lain half naked in the barn and how she'd undressed him herself. Sazel said she didn't pay attention to such trifles. The gentleman entered, apologized for being late, and introduced himself as Kartzi Urbios. When the lady saw him, she thought he was the most insensitive blockhead, but she greeted him politely and did not understand why he was dressed like that. The butler offered to discuss the contract and informed her that after signing it, she would become the Duchess of Urbios for 1 year. Sazel said she knew about it. The man added that the contract stipulated an advance payment of 100,000 gold and a monthly allowance of 10,000. At that moment, the girl was curious whether he knew or not. The butler assured the lady there was nothing to worry about, but she interrupted him and said she understood her duty, to be loyal to the Duchess and to behave as quietly as a mouse. The main character thinks he shouldn't worry. As soon as she finds the right person, she'll take the money and leave calmly. In her opinion, that's enough to ensure a successful partnership and his satisfaction. The butler mentions that there's one last thing left, the contract's expiration date. But the gentleman suddenly interrupts him and asks how much longer he must wait. Sazel notices that Karzi is clearly displeased. He approaches the lady and asks if she has any questions about the engagement. She replies that she has none, after which he announces that he must go. The butler explains that the gentleman usually doesn't behave like this, and is probably just busy with some business right now. The main character thinks that he doesn't remember her and didn't recognize her, which means everything is fine. The butler thanks the lady for her understanding. The man says that the Duchess needs to prepare her wedding dress and offers to follow him. Sazel asks Aslan if she's forgotten her role and reminds her to be polite. She replies that, with her abilities, she's not at all suited to being a servant. The lady ironically asks if she thinks she's always dreamed of getting married. Then she remarks that their work rarely matches their abilities and calls such behavior unprofessional. The girl tells her sister she understands and asks her not to shout. At this point, the protagonist asks the butler why he stopped. He replies that there's something ahead, and the lady notices the gentleman. The butler announces that they have come to prepare the lady's outfit and asks why the gentleman is here. He calmly replies that this is his home. Kaguya says he has much to do, so he'll be leaving, and asks what the lady is doing. She replies that she hasn't done much and asks permission to explore the duchy a bit. The butler reminds her that she'll be staying here for a whole year and should be familiar with the mansion. He asks her to wait a little, as he's ordered the servants to leave and now needs to call them. The butler says the Duchess's escort can't be entrusted to just anyone, and he will find the right person. He soon adds that such a candidate already exists. At that moment, the gentleman drops the vase and it breaks. The butler immediately asks if he's hurt. Kaguya assures that everything is fine, explains that it happened by accident, and offers to continue the conversation, reminding him about finding an escort for the lady. The gentleman tells the assistant that there is a man who knows the mansion best and is worthy of being at the Duchess's side. The butler asks if he has any objections, and the assistant agrees. Kaguya offers the lady his hand and invites her to go. Sazel feels a strange uneasiness, as if animal claws might be hidden beneath his gloves, but he accepts the offer nonetheless. Sazel thinks becoming a married woman is a strange feeling. In her past life, she was surrounded by many men, but she never married, and when her money ran out, they abandoned her. She couldn't have imagined that she would marry Duke Erbios, the empire's finest groom. He doesn't recognize her, so there's no reason to doubt her. She wonders what kind of man he's become. The lady thinks that the one they once saved grew up to be a worthy and noble man, and now accompanies her. The gentleman asks if she feels awkward around him. She's surprised and replies that she doesn't. Sazel notes how much he's matured and decides it's best to maintain a good relationship with him. Sazel suggests that perhaps the Duke is the one who feels awkward, and that this kind of relationship is new to him. He objects and says he's used to it. The girl wonders if he had dated anyone in the past years and says that people should at least meet and date someone before marriage. The gentleman declares that he despises such things. He says it's frivolous to come together and then separate, and reminds us that the difference between man and beast is responsibility for one's feelings and actions. Sazel agrees, thinking about how she almost forgot who his father was. He notices her gaze and asks why she's looking at him like that. She replies that she's just saying that, and feels as if she's looking at her past self. This realization came to her after years of imprisonment, but he seems completely unchanged. The lady thinks that's why she was able to easily fool him and take his place as his wife. Kaguya asks what she thinks, but she clarifies what she's talking about. He explains that he's referring to a recent conversation and assumes her opinion differs from his. He then asks if she feels burdened by the responsibility for her actions. Sazel replies that responsibility must be taken. After all, they are people, not animals. The gentleman smiles and says he knew her answer. She wonders if that answer was the reason for his smile. She notices she's been staring at his jewel-colored eyes for too long and quickly apologizes. The lady says that the mansion is incredibly beautiful, majestic and huge, and remarks that anyone who grew up here must have nothing to envy. Kaguya disagrees. He says even the worst place can leave memories that last a lifetime. The girl delightedly remarks that these are very beautiful words. After the walk, the lady tells her sister that he's stupid and doesn't understand anything. It felt like her father had come back to life, and it made her hair stand on end. Sazel says that's not why she saved him. Aslan is surprised, but replies that it's even better this way, since they'll be able to get as much as possible and gradually persuade the Duke to find the girl they need. The main character explains that she simply meant that if he were more cunning, his life would be easier. In any case, there's no need to worry. He's the kind of guy who never loses his way. Aslan finds this odd and thinks her sister seems even more of a fool to her. She decides not to say anything to avoid arguments, even though she senses something is wrong. The sister asks if she noticed anything strange during their walk. The lady replies that he simply has a more open look, but otherwise he hasn't changed since the barn. Aslan knows that as a servant she couldn't get a good look at his eyes, but these fleeting glances still make her uneasy. Kaguya tells the lady they'll see each other in 2 days. She replies that he shouldn't have seen her off. He explains that he wanted to fulfill his duty before the ceremony and was worried about causing her inconvenience. She counters, saying that's not what she meant. Sitting in the carriage, the main character does not understand where this strange feeling comes from and attributes it to her own wariness. Sazel asks if she noticed that he doesn't know them at all and doesn't understand why she feels so sad. At the ball, the ladies discuss a rumor that Duke Urbios will hold a secret wedding ceremony tomorrow. Others don't believe it and consider it absurd. One of the ladies says the servant learned of this from a friend at the Duke's residence. She adds that the bride, who has a problematic home, arrived with a maid and looks ugly. The Duchy of Urbios is said to be a symbol of the capital's aristocracy, and rumors of the Duchess's inappropriate appearance are rife. Karina recalls her servant saying something similar and asks the name of the maid at the residence. She is told her name was Nancy. The protagonist removes her mask and asks her sister if she's heard the name Nancy. Aslan asks what she plans to do about it. Sazel says this is her last night without marriage, and she doesn't want to make any noise. The girl asks if she will just accept this and admits that she is in shock. Aslan says that before the ladies trembled under the curse, and now they are looking for an excuse to say nasty things, and sarcastically asks why they don't marry him themselves. The main character states that this cannot be allowed because she spent too much money on all of this. One of the ladies remarks that it would be easier if the late Duchess had also been a blonde, and complains about how much money was spent on the hair color. Ria says now is not the time for that, and asks what will happen if the rumors cause the duchy to cancel the wedding. The girl notes how the nobles love gossip, and believes that because of it, the Duke might change his mind. Sazel reminds Aslan that the Duke isn't like that. They met again, and he's still the same, meaning if he was tricked before, he'll be caught again. The lady is sorry that he had to suffer so much, but she is saddened that he has not changed at all. Sazel says he's not the type to call off the wedding. Melissa asks if she's really getting married. The main character sadly confirms this. Aslan suggests everyone pull themselves together and not worry, because 1 year will fly by. There is only 1 day a year in the Empire when prohibited gambling becomes legal. The girl tells her sister that it's time to place her bets, admitting that she herself doesn't yet know whether she will become a duchess and wants to clarify this. The lady gives Aslan money and sends her on ahead, adding that the bet need not be monetary and that special conditions are permitted by the festival. The man asks if there are any other proposals, and says that after they are announced, the most popular agenda will be chosen. He reports that the most money is at stake on whether Duke Urbios will be able to successfully marry tomorrow. Aslan is surprised that everyone is already doubting her sister's wedding, and doesn't understand what they should do now. The main character explains that the agenda needs to be changed and asks her sister to announce a new one. A lady offers to bet on whether a couple from the Duchy of Urbios will divorce within a year. The stakes immediately start to rise, and she notices that no one is complaining anymore. Sazel is sure that now everyone is waiting for the wedding first, and only then the desired divorce. The world is designed in such a way that people are more interested in the bad than the good, especially when it comes to someone else's personal life. The lady says that since the wedding is going to happen anyway, they can make some extra income from it, and suggests they also place bets. The main character understands that the bet will not bring in much money without both sides, and suggests simply waiting quietly and not worrying. Sazel wonders why Aslan hasn't returned for so long. At that moment, the man makes a bet, $1 million, that there won't be a divorce. The lady is amazed when she sees the Duke, and her sister remarks that she didn't think he was so stupid. The next day, the young gentleman asks her if everything is all right. She answers affirmatively, but he notices that she looks ill. The heroine thinks it's easy for him to say this, since yesterday kept her awake at night, and she believes that even with wealth, one shouldn't throw money around like that. She doesn't understand why they need to arrange such a lavish ceremony, because she expected a modest celebration and a quiet life for 1 year, followed by separation. Sazel thinks that this is all being done for the sake of a pre-prepared reputation as a divorced man. Kartzi starts to say that if she's having a hard time, then the ceremony is okay, but the girl interrupts, saying that it's not worth it because everything will end soon. He explains that he wanted to ask her to be patient for a little while. The bishop announces the transition to the vows and asks the Duke if he is ready to take them. Kartza swears, as the head of the Urbios house, to fulfill his marital duty to the goddess with body and soul. The priest addresses the Duchess and asks her to reaffirm her commitment to the marriage with her mind and soul. She responds that she understands this. The bishop asks if there are any objections and, hearing none, continues. Sazel thinks it couldn't have been any other way. After all, everyone had placed their bets. The priest declares that the rites are complete, and with the blessing of the goddess and the protection of the emperor, they become husband and wife. The heroine realizes she is now a married woman. The priest suggests ending the ceremony with a kiss. The lady is surprised because she did not expect this in a contract marriage. The Duke pulls her close and kisses her. The girl is surprised at how good he is at kissing. Kaguya asks if she is okay and takes her hand. The sister thinks that the lady liked it, and the main character is sure that they will laugh at her for many years to come. An uncle comes up to them, asks what is going on, and says that in any case it is worth congratulating him. The young gentleman thanks him. The Marquis remarks that he is indeed married, adding that such a union would have been impossible during his elder brother's lifetime. Kaguya replies that his father knew what he wanted. The Marquis says that, as his only brother, he is always ready to help his nephew. The Marquis recalls the noise of the previous night in the square and believes that his nephew has overdone it, since such bets could harm the authority of the duchy. The Duke insists that the sum is small, and recalls that the last amount he borrowed from his father was about the same. Kaguya's uncle doesn't seem to be having any trouble, adding that his late father would have appreciated his brother coming in person. The Duke expresses hope that his uncle will return safely. The Marquis is dissatisfied with this tone and says that there seems to be a misunderstanding in financial matters, recalling his brother's investments. The young gentleman interrupts him, saying that his father would now simply be enjoying his nephew's wedding. The uncle becomes curious about what his nephew is looking at, the princess or the imperial knights. The Marquis says that she is his nephew's fiancée and that he hasn't even really seen her face, after which he suggests coming closer. Uncle asks if there's any reason why this can't be done. Kaguya replies that there are no obstacles, he's just a little worried. The Marquis says he's already heard about the bride, so he advises against worrying. He adds that since the marriage is already consummated, there's no point in hiding the wife, since everyone already knows everything. Kaguya asks if his uncle really thought he was being overly concerned about his wife. He replies that it's true, and promises not to ask any questions that might embarrass the Duchess. The young master says that the family's honor will not suffer because of this, and explains that he meant his uncle. Hearing this, Ervante silently turns around and leaves. Xian says that the master did the right thing, because it is unclear how his uncle dared to come here and disturb him, and so brazenly at that. The Viscount notes that the Marquis's intention to paint the Duchess in a bad light was obvious. He praises the gentleman for his answer and asks how he came up with it. Kaguya explains that he spoke sincerely because he was genuinely worried about his uncle. The main character notices that the gentleman had just been smiling in a conversation with the Marquis and wonders if he knows who brought him to this state. Sazelle thinks that there is not a single smart person around her, and briefly considers whether it would not be easier to simply fleece him blind. She regrets that she does not have her people nearby to talk to, but she understands that servants cannot be present at the wedding feast. Princess Ivona unexpectedly approaches her and greets her. Sazelle replies that she is honored to meet the princess. Ivona says she is pleased to meet the new famous duchess. The protagonist thinks the rumors from the festival were clearly about her wedding. She recalls that they studied at the same academy and assumes there was something between them before. Sazelle notices that everyone around them is closely following their conversation, and even the man is glancing in their direction, his gaze lingering on the princess. She thinks that under different circumstances, things might have turned out differently for them from the very beginning, and then she would not have been able to fool Kaguya and take this place. The princess turns to the Duchess again. She apologizes and asks again what exactly was said, trying to understand the true purpose of the conversation. Sazelle carefully asks if the princess has anything to say about the Duke, and from her expression, he knows she's hit the nail on the head. The heroine assures them that they can speak freely. Yvonne mentions rumors about the Duchess, and the lady replies that they are only talking about yesterday's bets at the festival, which should not be taken seriously. The princess says that's not the case, but Sazelle goes on to explain that, for the honor of House Urbios, the Duke made a bet, hoping to stop any unpleasant talk. Sazelle looks at the princess and thinks that she seems cute, unaware of her weakness for the topic. The Duchess suggests calling the Duke if necessary, but the princess assures that there is no need for this. The lady decides not to press further. She believes that in a year, when she's gone, the princess will be the ideal partner for Kaguya. But for now, he's her husband. Sazelle understands that she has received enough money and is obliged to honestly fulfill the terms of the contract, no matter how nice the princess is. The Duchess asks permission to take her leave, citing the butler. Yvonne replies that they will see each other next time, and the lady says she is pleased to meet him. The maid of honor calls the princess back. Ivana remarks that the Duchess seems to know nothing, since the Duke has never lost a bet in his life. The butler informs her that this is the Duchess's bedroom, and isn't sure if she'll like it. Upon seeing the room, the girl is surprised and thinks he's nailed it right the first time. He explains that the room belonged to the previous Duchess and has remained virtually unchanged, adding that any wishes regarding the interior can be voiced at any time. The butler recalls the master's words that even a barn would suit her, and mentally reproaches himself for his inattention. He says that the bed linen is prepared in advance, but as for the rest, he assumes that everything should be new. The girl replies that it wasn't worth trying so hard, notes the beautiful color, and asks if he chose it himself. The butler says he will report everything else tomorrow. The maids assure their mistress that she should not worry, because they will serve her well and take care of her. Looking around the room, the girls enthusiastically say that it is beautiful and worthy of a duchy. Sazel asks Raya to quickly count all the jewelry. Aslan jokes that it's boring and no one will notice if a couple of pieces are missing. The main character understands that her sister will not stop at a couple of things, and reminds her that they did not come here to steal. Aslan laughs, saying her sister already sounds like a true duchess. The lady lies down on the bed and asks if it all seems a bit fake. Raya admits that she didn't expect an official ceremony, and recalls that there was no talk of it. Sazel agrees and suggests that it all comes down to the status of the duchy, adding that she thought the man's life was a moral compass. She thinks that it doesn't matter whether it's a real marriage or not, order still needs to be maintained, otherwise her conscience won't give her peace. Aslan objects and remembers the drunkard from the alley who got married at 6 in the morning to be sober for once and hide his addiction. Sazel doesn't know why, but that incident came back to her. Raya asks her to talk about something more positive and not compare everything. The heroine replies that she does not want to slander, but believes that the bride was deceived. Aslan says the bride was supposed to be served with an arrest warrant that morning, and the marriage was a way to mitigate the punishment, adding that the world is a complete sham. Sazel notes that if the man had been a magnet for good luck, he would not have married in the first place, as he was well acquainted with the exemplary life. Melissa suggests that since he went to such lengths to arrange an arranged marriage, there must be some point to it. The main character reassures the girls and suggests they go to bed quickly, since it's unknown when they'll have the chance to spend the night in such a luxurious room again. Raya reminds them that it's their wedding night and asks if they can stay. Sazel explains that it's just a contract and the Duke is busy with guests. The lady adds that this is all part of the established wedding procedure. Suddenly the door opens, and the young gentleman asks if she went to bed first. The lady apologizes and says she won't be long. Kurtz replies that it's okay, since he would have had to go back to bed anyway. The main character thinks she needs help and looks at the girls with a silent call to do something. The young master turns to the maids and asks them to leave, believing that it would be for the best. Sazel asks why he kicked everyone out. He replies that it's only natural for a wedding night. Kurtz invites her to make herself comfortable and says that the guests have already left, and the butler will take care of the rest. He looks at the girl, calls her his wife, and asks what's wrong with her. The lady is surprised that he calls her that and says it's unexpected. He replies that it's strange to call her anything else after the wedding. Kartsa explains that the marriage letter from His Majesty and the oath in the temple make everything legal if the procedure is followed. Sazel wonders how long this will go on and asks if he knew she was planning to live out a year as a contractual duchess. He replies that the year begins today. The lady counters that this wasn't in the contract, but he reminds her of her words to be loyal to the House of Erbios. Sazel says she doesn't like coercion. She promises to fulfill her role as duchess, but she won't go further without feeling in pressure. Kartsa replies that he also does not accept coercion and explains that this is just a tradition and the groom's duty. He touches her face and tells her that if she feels forced, she assures him it's okay, understanding that he was only trying to lift her veil. Kartsa announces that he's leaving. The heroine thinks it's for the best, even though she feels awkward. He says that he will explain everything to the butler himself and asks how the meeting with the guests went. Sazel replies that she also greeted the guests and that Princess Ivana arrived first. The Duke asks what they talked about. The lady replies that nothing special, adding that the princess seems young and pure. Sazel says that Ivana was raised in good conditions and is a great fit for him, reminding him that he was about to go to his room. He replies that he's changed his mind. The girl is surprised, and he says that this is his house, and she's his wife now. Kartse touches her head and suggests that she go to bed quickly, clarifying in advance that there will be no coercion. Lying in bed, the girl thinks that she was pushed away and decides that if the embarrassment was caused by a cheater, her pride will not suffer. Zazel realizes she can't stand it when such a jerk puts her in an awkward position. When she falls asleep, the gentleman looks at her and thinks that she is still the same as before, and that perhaps this should not have been done. There was a time when she lost everything and wandered the streets without friends, love, and money. She thinks that this is why, when she found herself behind bars, she valued the warmth of others most of all, not knowing whether this day would be her last. In the morning, the Duchess wakes up and notices that the gentleman is not around. Zazel tells the girls that he's not there and sighs in relief, adding that it could have turned into a big problem. Raya notices her face is glowing and asks what they did last night. Lady replies that she was just sleeping. Aslan asks with a grin if they want to be believed. Zazel says they can ask the Duke if they want. Aslan is about to do so, but the lady stops her, calling it base. Zazel asks him to stop and says that there is no point in wasting time on this. She asks when the Duke managed to leave. Raya replies early in the morning, citing meetings and a conference. Raya asks if she'll go to the Duke. The lady asks why, and replies that she has no business with him. Zazel asks everyone to listen carefully and says that until the goal is achieved, they just need to play their roles. She adds that from today on, she will calmly follow the rules of the house, take care of herself, and change the atmosphere, asking if everything is clear. The Duchess suggests going out and pretending that they are waiting for her, assuring them that they are doing an excellent job of it. Raya explains that this is because the Duke asked for it to be done this way, deciding that Madame had been too overzealous all night and needed care. The man asks when the Duchess will visit the Imperial Palace. Kartse replies that they will think about it, since His Majesty knows about the fake marriage. Zion conveys that the Emperor is interested in the rumors and would like to see them both in the palace. The Duke says he cannot promise, as such things cannot be done under duress. Zazel asks the Duke to speak with her later. At that moment, she notices a guest, and the Duke suggests they step outside for a moment. The girl asks him what he's doing now. He replies that he's apparently working. She indignantly says she meant something else. Kartse suggests she take a nap if she hasn't had enough sleep. Zazel doesn't understand his naive reaction and wonders how he could say such a thing in front of the maids. Kartse doesn't understand what he's talking about. She explains that he's her husband, and he confirms it, but she wonders what he'll think when he hears her explanation. Zazel says it was all misunderstood, because the words about her being overzealous sound ambiguous. She clarifies that they simply slept in the same bed and asks why he said that. The Duke replies that from the outside it looked different. She is surprised and wonders if she slept the same way as in the cell. He says that this happens to people. Hearing this, she agrees. Zazel apologizes and explains that she was very tired after the ceremony. He replies that he understood this, and that's why he explained everything to the servants that way. She doesn't understand why she is simultaneously grateful to him and wants to hit him for such concern. The Duke advises her not to dwell on it, dismissing it as a misunderstanding. She doubts it, as such things aren't so easily forgotten. Kartse asks if she's ever experienced anything like this. She replies no, as this is her first marriage. He says he has too, adding that they should take care of each other. He notes that she is the only woman in the family at the residence, and there could be many more similar situations, asking if there's any need to worry so much. Zazel asks if he means he'll continue sleeping in her room. He replies that all married couples do that, and it will help quiet the rumors. The gentleman says that last night was calm and pleasant because she slept soundly, as did he. The lady protests that she slept alone. He asks if she remembers her actions last night.